Good evening, race fans, and welcome to Podium Esports coverage of a special round of Monday Night Racing presented by Tufco Flooring, the SimSeat All-Star Race, live from the Lone Star State here at Texas Motor Speedway. I am your host, Taylor Burris, and joining me is my partner in crime, Justin Prince. Our producer is Ryan Bauer, and he's using cameras provided by Dougie Beard. Justin, everything is bigger in Texas, and we are going to have a star-studded all-star event here tonight in probably one of the most interesting combos that we've seen in Monday Night Racing, something that was used a couple of seasons ago, the radical prototypes on the oval at Texas Motor Speedway. We just saw the NASCAR Cup Series do their all-star race here not too long ago, so this is just going to be one wild and wacky race that we are about to see.
It's going to be excitement. It's going to be fun. And many of these drivers are having a blast when it comes to practice and preparation because the high speeds and full throttle action also brings a lot of tandeming, a lot of opportunity for drivers to charge from the front of the field to the back of the field, back to the front of the field. It's going to be a race where excitement is going to be the key word here, Taylor. And it's going to be like that all night long throughout this race.
It certainly is, Justin. This track, with its newly reconfigured, which was reconfigured back in 2010, will provide a little bit of a different scenario for these drivers here. Of course, the last time that we were here, we ran the older configuration, and of course, Ryan Vargas was the winner the last time they do that. As we take a look here, zooming down to the Lone Star State of Fort Worth, Texas, here at the Texas Motor Speedway. Opened in 1996, was reconfigured a couple of years ago 10 years ago in 2010. Turns 1 and 2 are banked at 20 degrees, 3 and 4 a little bit more banked with 24 degrees. This 1.5 mile circuit provided a lot of excitement throughout recent years, but things are going to be a little interesting now that it's dropped down to 1 points paying race in the NASCAR Cup Series schedule, with the All-Star race ran here earlier like we just talked about. And as we look at tonight's race analysis for tonight's race, Justin, 2 laps of qualifying, a 95-lap dash, so 142.5 miles. These drivers will have 2 quick repairs, 3 green-white checkered attempts, only 2 sets of tires. But the biggest thing is that fuel, 70%. They won't have a full tank of fuel, so that's going to provide a little bit of strategy, especially if you're not going to be able to save fuel while in the draft.
Was talking with a couple drivers about that actually, and they brought up how they felt like fuel could be a potential factor in this race, as well as based on the experience here, with drivers being able to run wherever it's paved is the key word. Wherever it's paved, including the apron, that's going to open up possibilities for potential attrition for drivers when they have damage, when they want to come down to the pit lane. All of that's going to be very vital for tonight, and those quick repairs are going to need to be utilized if you get damage, because you get damage with this car and track combination, it can cost you up to 10 miles per hour in speed in the whole pack of cars like you see here.
Yes, indeed, as they zoom right across the No Limits front straightaway, heading down into turns 1 and 2. A group of cars will provide so much excitement here. And these cars, Justin, unlike what we see with the NASCAR Cup Series or Xfinity Series or even trucks, they can run that apron and make that car work through there. As we see one of the drivers out there, that's going to be the number 50. That currently is driven by Gabe Wood from Valdosta, Georgia. He's the tire specialist over at JD Motorsports, having a great run, and has none other than NASCAR Xfinity Series champion Jeff Green on the nose of that Radical, as we see more incidents.
When I asked him about why Jeff Green is on his car for tonight, the response is, or was I should say, why not? So some of these drivers are having some fun with their paint schemes as well this evening, because you've got drivers with goldfish cars, you've got Nicolas Cage cars, you've got cars with beans on them. A lot of these drivers are having fun, but it's also, keep in mind, with the All-Star race, money on the line, $200 for the race winner tonight. So it's a chance to be able to compete for that money. And these drivers in some cases have said, on the last lap in particular, you likely won't have friends with how aggressive you need to be around this track to win, as seen with this combination in the past.
It certainly is, Justin. Of course, this is the precursor before we get started with the playoffs. And with that, let's take a look at the schedule right now. We finished all the regular season races. It's time for some fun with the All-Star race here tonight. And then starting next week, July 19th, we kick off round 1 of the playoffs, the round of 13, as we head to Las Vegas and Nashville for the first round, then Talladega and the Miami Roval Circuit for round of 10, Darlington and Auto Club for the round of 7, and then the Championship 4 on August 30th. We head back to Miami with the trucks. So very exciting. And here are the 13 drivers that we will see compete for a championship. Ford Martin, Robbie Lyons, and DJ Cummings starting from 13th and 11th. Gabe Wood, we just saw a few moments ago, along with Joshua Schley, David Schildhouse, Max Kennan, Anthony Alfredo, the only drivers who got in via points, with Rajah Caruth, the last week's winner, with Brad Perez, Matt Stallneck, Adam Cabot, and then, of course, the most dominant driver this season, Shane Van Gisbergen, with 4 wins to his name so far this season. A dominating performance, Justin. A lot can be said with him. Of course, he just won this past weekend over in Townsville as well, so he's got a lot of momentum on his side.
A lot of momentum and a lot of speed. There's a reason that every time he reaches the racetrack, he's one of the favorites. He has a lot of experience on the sim and has utilized that to precision and talent. He's going to be difficult to stop, I think, tonight. He's one of your top competitors in this All-Star race.
He certainly is. But now we bring in a former winner here of the All-Star race, NASCAR Xfinity Series driver for JD Motorsports. Ryan Vargas joins us for the pre-race show. Ryan, first and foremost, tell us a little bit about the idea behind your paint scheme for your Radical tonight.
I mean, they are the snack that smiles back, goldfish. You know what I mean? It's my past winning scheme. I feel like it's what I need to run to pay tribute to my previous victory here. So we'll see how tonight goes.
Certainly indeed. And one of the things also, Ryan, is since you're that defending winner, what do you think is the biggest surprise or change that we could possibly see with how this track is with these cars?
Well, one of the first things I noticed is temps. Last year when we did this, temps weren't an issue at all. You could stay locked on for pretty much the whole race. Now temps kind of go up a little bit. They go up at about 10 laps into a run, a little bit before that. I don't know exactly when the motor will pop, but you gotta kind of keep an eye on that when you're tandeming and know exactly who you are around. So that's gonna be one thing to keep an eye on.
What's it been like working with the fellow drivers you've been having? Because in practice, you've been working a lot with a various group of drivers. What's it been like trying to teach them how to use this combination and utilize some of that experience from the last time the combination was used back in season 1?
I think the big thing is just getting people confident with the pushing. You know, some guys like to, are okay with being pushed, but they hug the inside line and it makes the car behind them, the pusher, have to really kind of scramble and try and make sure they're lined up correctly, or else risk hitting the apron and causing a stack up. So it's all about kind of building the confidence in the person A you're pushing, or B the one that is pushing you. So that is definitely kind of like the fine line of balance here.
Well, Ryan, hopefully we will see you smiling back here with a $200 richer with tonight's race. Anyone you would like to say thank you to or give a shout out to for tonight's race?
Yes, Goldfish is not a sponsor of mine, but please, Pepperidge Farms, I beg of you. I also would like to say thank you to Swan Security, Maintenex, all the partners on board our Xfinity Series race car. Very happy with how this year's been. This past week we also had Monarch Roofing. Just been a lot of fun, and I haven't done the full season of Monday Night Racing this year. Took a step back from it, but it's always fun to come in and do these races where I'm able to just have fun. Go out there, and I kind of made a tweet earlier saying that I'm either bringing home the check or this virtual steering wheel, so we'll see how this goes.
Certainly, indeed. Well, Ryan, good luck tonight, and we look forward to seeing what you can do out there on tonight's race, as he, of course, is the defending Monday Night Racing All-Star race winner at Texas Motor Speedway with these Radicals. So we'll look forward to seeing what Ryan Vargas can do here tonight. As we can look ahead now, there's about 5.5 minutes left in practice, Justin. Let's take a look at some of the practice times of seeing. Granted, this is utilizing the draft and the slipstream with these cars, so practice times are a little bit, all over the place, but of course, none other than Shane Van Gisbergen and Gabe Wood, your top two in the 32.95 bracket. As we see this group of cars working through turns 1 and 2, you'll see the 4-car train on the inside lane, and then the 2 cars trying to work together, and then, of course, the chaos ensues down the back straightaway.
As Vargas emphasized, being able to know how to tandem draft is going to be so critical if you want to be able to succeed, as well as know which lines work. For example, knowing how to defend utilizing the outside of the apron is going to be something drivers are going to have to be able to know. Other competitors need to know their limitations and how tight that quad-oval, I should rather say, can be on the corner exits, because that's a danger spot with these cars here with this track combination. It's all stuff where experience is going to matter. And there's a reason you see drivers like Vargas towards the top, drivers like Davison towards the top, drivers like Will Rogers, Garrett Smithley towards the top of the board. And it's not just with the speeds, but also having the ability and precision, as well as knowing with experience how to handle tandems, especially from faces such as Nicolas Cage.
Of course, I think that's a little bit of a scary situation right there, as you see Anders Krones in the Nicolas Cage face paint scheme as he works down the bottom of turn 3 or tries to sling up right in front of some of the competitors here. This is a good practice for them in order when it comes to those final laps. But let's give a shout out to, of course, Brett Baldeck in the number 4. He's in 4th position in the practice charts right now. He's someone who's always had good runs when it comes to the super speedway drafting style races. The Fox 46 Charlotte reporter is going to see if he can improve and find a way to get maybe his first career win in Monday Night Racing.
There's a good chance he's been one of those drivers who's been working with Vargas and learning from him and his respective group. I know there was some surprise when it came to the practice speeds at first with how high he was at the top of the board early on in the session, but it's going to be interesting to see if he can maintain that during the race, because if you can survive in the race and get yourself to the checker flag and get yourself into perfect track position for the end, then you got a chance to be that much richer by the end.
Certainly so. Also, another driver we have to talk about is the defending SimSeat All-Star Race winner from Season 2, Anthony Alfredo. He picked up the win last season. He currently sits in 13th position right now in the practice charts. Keep an eye on him as well, as he is having a great run. And then, of course, some of the other drivers who had strong runs at super speedway style races. Matt Stolnick won the season opener at the Daytona International Speedway with the Xfinity car, so he'll know a thing or two about getting around utilizing the slipstream of this track here with these cars, as currently right now he is not one of the top drivers, but he does have a shot to win tonight's race. Justin, any final thoughts before we turn it over and get ready to watch some excitement and action here at Texas?
Survival is going to be key, as well as luck. If you want to be able to win tonight's All-Star race, you're going to need both of those to come into your direction if you want to be that driver in victory lane.
Certainly so. Well, with that, we are going to take a commercial break, but when we come back, the Monday Night Racing All-Star Race at No Limits Texas Motor Speedway will be kicking off. And of course, James Pike, along with Kenneth Bueno, will bring you all the storylines. And of course, Justin Prince will be down on pit road hunting for the latest stories and scoops. I'm Taylor Burris, your host. Our producer, of course, is none other than Ryan Bauer. When we come back, we will have the SimSeat All-Star Race live on Podium Esports.
We are an industrial flooring company specializing in custom floors and drains. We don't believe in the one-size-fits-all approach to flooring, and neither should you. When you choose Tufco, we consult with you about your needs, industry requirements, and factor in numerous variables. After assessing your facility, we engineer your floor and drains, then install everything ourselves. That's the Tufco way.
Visit our website at tufcoflooring.com.
Good evening, race fans, and welcome to Podium Esports coverage of the Season 3 All-Star Race for Monday Night Racing, presented by Tufco Flooring, the SimSeats All-Star Race, live at iRacing's virtual Texas Motor Speedway in Fort Worth, Texas. James Pike, the voice of Podium Esports, here alongside Kenneth Bueno, our reporter Justin Prince, our producer for the evening Ryan Bauer, with cameras brought to us this evening by Dougie Beard. Kenneth, this is a wild combo because you can literally take these cars anywhere on this racetrack and run them. And when we say anywhere, we mean anywhere, and that includes the apron, where you will most likely see these drivers go 2, potentially 3 wide at points, because there's so much downforce available with these radical SR8s that they're running tonight.
There is a lot of downforce, James, and this race, in at least the simpler term, is going to be very chaotic. But for many drivers, this is going to be all about fun. This is an all-star race, right? You had a grueling regular season, all the races that led up to the playoffs, all the guys, the 13 guys who made it in the playoffs, the guys who unfortunately were not able to make the playoffs. Tonight, you kind of throw all that out the window. It's all about having a good time, having some fun, and you said it there. If they're going to be all the way to the apron, 4, 5, maybe even 6 wide, going down certain parts of this Texas Motor Speedway, it's definitely going to be a wild one, and these guys are definitely going to have smiles from ear to ear. It's all just going to be about slinging it here at the Lone Star State and having a lot of fun nonetheless.
No points on the line, no wildness yet to worry about with point standings. It's all about the victory, bringing home the checker or the steering wheel or whatever comes first, and walking away with $200, because that's the prize going to the winner of this SimSeats All-Star Race this evening, as we get the chance to look a little bit more closely at this Texas Motor Speedway that was built, as Taylor Burris said in the pre-race show, back in 1996. You zoom in, we're not terribly far away from the center of the Dallas-Fort Worth Megaplex, about 30 minutes outside of that. But this was the palace that Bruton Smith envisioned when he began turning SMI into the powerhouse that it is today, and this was the crown jewel that he put together. We have a 1.5 mile racetrack with 24 degrees of banking over in 3 and 4 and 20 degrees of banking in turns 1 and 2. This track was recently reconfigured a few years ago, which is going to make things even more interesting, Kenneth, for these radicals, because you're going to have 2 different sets of banking to work with in 2 very different ways which you approach those corners.
And you're also going to have a different surface here, James, because they had a repave back in 2017. So before, you used to have a very bumpy, a very rough surface here at Texas. But because of that repave, it's made this track a lot smoother. And for these cars, that means they're going to have a lot more to work with on the racetrack instead of being limited by the amount of bumps and kind of the roughness of the racetrack under the lights. So making that sort of pavement move to the smoother surface makes things a lot easier. And with the downforce that you have with these cars, it's pretty much full out. No matter what banking it is, no matter where you are on the racetrack, you'll be sure to get a run nonetheless.
It's a little bit like the SCCA Spec Ford racers, but with a little bit more power. That's, I think, the easiest comparison that can be made, especially if you're familiar with a lot of the cars on the service. So you've got that same level of downforce, but you also have more power to work with, and you can just turn these things all over. It takes a lot to get these things turned sideways, but when they go, Kenneth, they go in a pretty spectacular fashion, because the wrecks that you'll see will be pretty crazy. You'll see wings flipping and cars flipping all over the place, but for the most part, you're going to see crazy moves from 2-3 wide and shifts down from the inside to the outside that are almost Indianapolis style in nature.
I don't necessarily think that turning these things sideways or getting the cars loose is going to be the biggest concern if you're a driver that doesn't want to get involved in any incidents. It's going to be what you said right there, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 wide, maybe even more if we end up seeing it. That's going to be the main concern, just trying to find space on the racetrack when everybody's all packed in together, everybody's drafting up on each other, everybody's using their aerodynamics to their advantage. And at that point, because they're also clustered together, that inevitably will lead to some sort of contact. And already in practice, James, we've seen a lot of drivers get very close, end up touching. All of a sudden, they both go around, they go straight for the outside fence. So hopefully many drivers can keep it clean for the rest of tonight's race. But I figure with the amount of close pack racing we're going to see, it's probably going to be inevitable for this race under the lights.
Emphasis on the word hope as you take a look at the schedule so far, where we've been, where we're going. So the regular season that we just completed last week on your left side, the All-Star race begins the second column on the right side, and then we move into the playoffs next week, starting with the cars of the NASCAR Cup Series at Las Vegas. We'll then go to Nashville Superspeedway with the super late models to round out the round of 13, where we chop the field from 13 drivers to 10. Then we'll head to Talladega with the trucks, and then the Roval at Homestead Miami Speedway with the Porsche 911 RSR to kick off August. At the end of that race, we'll go from 10 drivers to 7. Then 2 very big tests for the drivers in Monday Night Racing. 2 very high skill requirement tracks and combos that we're going to work with. Darlington in the 1987 Ford Thunderbird and Chevrolet Monte Carlo, and then the Xfinity Series at Auto Club before we go racing for a championship. So lots of fun to be had throughout the back half of July and August, but for now, let's focus on our Beef Jerky Unlimited Pole Award as we get set for tonight's race. Will Rogers with the fast time, a 32.946, as the Flying Hawaiian will take the top spot in the grid over only the most dominant driver in the regular season of Season 3 of Monday Night Racing and Townsville Sweepmaster in Supercars over the weekend, Shane Van Gisbergen up there on the outside of the front row, along with Gabe Wood, Ryan Vargas, Anders Krohn, and Adam Cabot completing the first 3 rows. Kenneth?
Talked about it on the pre-race show just a little bit, but Fox 46's Brett Baldick will start tonight from the 7th position with Brandon Brown to his outside in row number 4. Joshua Slate and Crypto Auto Sports Max Stolnick will start on the outside of row 5, and then you'll find Ron Capps to P11 and Anthony Alfredo, the winner of the last All-Star race we held at Monday Night Racing, at a different track. Nonetheless, he's going to try to go for 2 in a row All-Star style at the outside of row 6.
P-Money there to the inside of row 7. Preston Pardis alongside Dylan Welch, Mike Clay, and James Bickford. And the children will be cheering on David Schulthouse, and the Breadmobile, Brad Perez, starting alongside David in 18.
Then back to 19th, and of course P20 to the outside of row 10. There's Justin Melillo and Michael Massey. That will be your row, with Paul Sutton behind them and Drew Welker in the 64. Before you'll find Seth Egger in the 57, and Garrett Smithley had a wild running throughout the playoffs last week. He's going to be starting around the P24 position tonight.
Stephen Font, James Davison, Chris Wilner, and TJ Majors part of this group a little bit further back. Gary Sexton with a deep starting spot. He'll have hoped to qualify it a little bit better. And Robbie Lyons going to start from 30th.
And the final two drivers here, James, that'll have a lot of work to do, but I reckon it probably won't be too much work. DJ Cummings, Ford Martin, two Crypto Autosport drivers in the back of row 16 for the rest of this field.
Teammates that'll have the ability to work together in tandem and hopefully work their way through the front of the field if they have things their way over the course of this evening. Let's take a little closer look at Texas Motor Speedway before we go green flag racing for this SimSeats All-Star race. Located in Fort Worth, Texas, the track opened in 1996 and was reconfigured in advance of the 2017 season. 20 degrees of banking in turns 1 and 2, 24 degrees of banking in turns 3 and 4, and 5 degrees of banking on the front stretch and the back stretch, and that includes the kinks in this hex oval that is 1.5 miles in length, 2.4 kilometers around. If you're using the metric system, Paul Tracy with the lap record in that ill-fated kart race back in 2001, 22.542 seconds. Drivers had 2 laps of qualifying available to them. Tonight we go for 95 laps, just over 140 miles, just under 230 kilometers. Drivers have 2 quick repairs available to them, 3 green-white checker attempts, and 2 sets of tires available to them in the pits. And tonight we run a fixed setup with 70% fuel tank, so you are going to have to pit at least once, maybe twice, depending on how things pan out. In Sim, the current time is the default day for iRacing, May 15, 2021. It's about 9:40 p.m. local time. Air temp is 77 degrees Fahrenheit. Track temp 79 degrees Fahrenheit. Winds are headed to the north at 4 miles an hour, and no humidity to work with. A dry Texas as we get set for racing under the lights. I think they did say in the song Once Upon a Time, Kenneth, that the stars at night are big and bright, clap, 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 deep in the heart of Texas. Yeah, something like that?
Yes, indeed. And it's going to be even brighter because you see, as you look behind the iRacing official pace car, they have headlights on these radicals. So they don't necessarily need them per se because we have lights all over the racetrack, but maybe make things a little bit brighter and maybe let some other drivers know where every other driver is on the racetrack with those headlights. But you said there in that race analysis, 2 quick repairs for this race. That's going to be the outlier here because usually in Monday Night Racing we have 1 available. So as soon as you burn off that 1 fast repair, then you're all done and dusted. Any other damage you get has to be repaired down pit road with time. But a second fast repair is going to change the game completely because we have a lot of incidents. Drivers have to use those both. It's going to be very imperative once we get to the end of this one, James.
Expect nothing short of madness in this SimSeats All-Star race for Season 3 of Monday Night Racing. Glad you're with us here on Podium Esports, whether or not you're watching on Twitch, on Facebook, on YouTube, or on Twitter, as the pace car pulls off. And it's the Season 2 and defending champion of the series, Will Rogers, that will get us under the green flag and going in this SimSeats All-Star race at the virtual Texas Motor Speedway. We are green for 95 laps of action from the Metroplex. Right on the front straightaway. Goodness gracious, they have gone up in the air on the opening lap. We saw it there. I figured someone was going to drop to the inside, Kenneth Bueno. It might have been Gabe Wood that was first. We'll take a look at the replay and see. But there was trouble coming out of turn 4, and the apron bites and bites immediately. Wood, I think, was the first one to go around, but there was contact with another driver that starts off our first yellow of the evening.
It was actually Anders Krohn, James, in the 47. He was the one to use the apron, one of the sole drivers to use it in 3 and 4. Got a bit of that ground, tried to get on the inside of Gabe Wood, but you said there, the little kinks that are on the front straightaway, that quad oval section, you see Krohn trying to keep it on the racetrack. Gabe Wood kind of cuts down a little bit. But boy, that's a very crazy sight through the front end of that race car. A couple of drivers go soaring over the grass there in the infield. But a wild wreck nonetheless. It was a Nicolas Cage car that tried to force the issue, ultimately creates our first caution of the evening.
Trouble as they get themselves lined up, and I think more importantly, we're going to see a few folks end up burning their faster pairs. Gabe Wood almost certainly will need his. We'll take a look at what Gary Sexton saw coming out of turn 4. He was deep in the field, so this all played out right in front of him, and you see the smoke, and you try and figure out where the best place is to go, and then you see cars casually flipping and flying all over the racetrack, and Gary just did the sensible thing. He said, you know what? I'm just going to get on the brakes and just come to a full stop. And then we'll see what happens. Also of note, as you see him on your screens, Shane Van Gisbergen did not grid immediately when we took the green flag. So SVG is also going to be part of that group coming from the back of the field, trying to work their way to the front, which is intriguing when you consider that SVG also had one of the fastest times in the hour-long practice session before we took the green just a few moments ago.
Yeah, it was very interesting that he didn't decide to go onto the grid, but even then, so officials have now given him an end-of-line penalty. So again, he has to work from the back once more, like he did at the start of this race. But given the amount of cautions that we may end up having, considering that we already had our first one within the first lap of this race, it could be easier, at least for Van Gisbergen, to get around some cars, get around cars most notably with damage, and then just easily try to trot through position after position after position, keep going from there. But for Van Gisbergen, it's going to be a tough road nonetheless with the way these pack races go.
But certainly not near as impossible as you would think. I think that's the most important piece of this, because you're going to see so many incidents. You're going to see so many people end up in wrecks. If you keep your car clean, that honestly may be the easiest way to climb from the back to the front. As we remind you that tonight's broadcast of Monday Night Racing is brought to you by Tufco Flooring, an industrial flooring company specializing in custom floors and drains. Tufco doesn't believe in the one-size-fits-all approach, and neither should you. They listen to your needs and requirements and develop custom solutions for every client. And for more information, you can visit their website at www.tufcoflooring.com. Didn't get the chance to get a lap complete under green, so we'll see if this next restart can do the trick. James Pike, Kenneth Bueno, Justin Prince down on pit road, and Ryan Bauer with cameras from Dougie Beard, bringing you coverage of the Season 3 All-Star Race for Monday Night Racing, the Sim Seats All-Star Race from iRacing's virtual Texas Motor Speedway in Fort Worth, Texas, as it's Rogers and his good friend in the Goldfish Mobile. Yes, you heard that correctly. Ryan Vargas, maybe getting a little bit cheesy with his paint scheme tonight? Or should I see myself out, Kenneth?
A little bit. I don't know if I can agree wholeheartedly with the joke there, but yes, it is a cheesy goldfish mobile for Ryan Vargas. Talked about him as the winner the last time we took the Radicals to this track, and definitely posed a very big threat to Will Rogers to start the races, giving him a bump strap all the way through the entire route to the front start finish. So we'll do it again, but I think we have a very edible selection of cars here, because you have the Goldfish Mobile for Ryan Vargas, you have the Beans Mobile for Brad Perez, and then you have for Anthony Alfredo, how about an Oreo machine as well?
I'm really glad I had food just before we came on air. Otherwise, I would probably be really hungry looking at all these cars. But we'll get set for the restart, which will come your way on lap number 6 of 95. Caution laps do count here, so certainly will be advantageous to these drivers to try and keep it clean. But there are faster pairs available if need be. And of note, Gabe Wood, Josh Slate, TJ Majors, the trio that have already used one of their 2 faster pairs. We'll see how that affects that group of drivers as we go back to green flag racing from the virtual Texas Motor Speedway. Will Rogers gets on the gas and takes off, and we're underway once again.
Another good start by Will Rogers. Ryan Vargas able to slip into second. You see Adam Cabot, Brandon Brown. A lot of these drivers going to start in single file, but it won't really take long here, James, if first start to fan out at least 2 to 3 wide. There's some 2 wide action near the rear of the field, but it seems as though mostly everybody wants to stay down low all the way to the white line. That's where they have the most momentum. A big shove by the 17 of Adam Cabot. Tried to take a look down low to Ryan Vargas. Not going to get there. As one driver, Matt Stolnick, looks all the way to the apron in 3 and 4.
Already beginning to fan out. You see him just on the rear of your screen as Stolnick will bleed back in. And that's the challenge of using the apron. You see the difference in momentum that Stolnick had compared to the drivers that ran the banking in 3 and 4. He lost about a car length or 2 just running down the front straightaway. So the challenge is, do you try and slide up in front of somebody on the apron and then give up the run? Or do you run that high line and keep the momentum up as we see a battle for the race leader? Comes Adam Cabot to the inside.
Cabot going to try the shorter way around the racetrack all the way to the bottom, but we're going to see that change. And obviously in 3 and 4, it's going to be more catastrophic, and it's going to really hurt your run more at the exit of the corner as opposed to 1 and 2, just because 1 and 2 has less banking. 1 and 2 is a relatively slower corner with every other car on the surface, not really with these radicals, but 3 and 4, you carry a lot more momentum naturally just because you have more banking, and obviously that section of the track is just a lot faster overall. So you're going to see that trade-off happen. A lot of drivers may decide to go here, drivers decide to go there, and decide whether their runs are going to be affected by it in a good or bad way. As you ride on board just behind Ryan Vargas, that was Brandon Brown who took over P3. It seems as though now for the moment, James, everyone just staying single file.
Brandon Brown, who has not had a lot of luck in this season of Monday Night Racing, but the talent is unquestionably there. You see him on some of the trickier combos, and that's usually when he seems to rise to the occasion, and maybe not a surprise that he's up towards the front. Justin Malillo here running in 10th with a little bit of breathing room in front of his car. A little bit back of Mike Clay, James Bickford, Dylan Welch and company carrying the Traction GG colors, and just waiting, I think, for his moment. You've got plenty of time to make a move if you're any one of these drivers, but don't tell that to Adam Cabot. Don't tell that to Ryan Vargas. They're already 2 trying to go 3 wide for the race lead down the front stretch.
And Anthony was able to gain a lot of momentum through the past couple laps, James, just kind of tailing behind this small pack of cars and just aiming to get all the draft necessary. He hasn't necessarily been able to make a proper move. I think now he's going to go straight for the inside of Matt Stolnick. Here's Ryan Vargas to the inside for the race lead.
Vargas about nearly clipped the wall coming out of 2 as they shuffle back onto the banking in 3 and 4. Good shot here from just behind Anthony Alfredo and company, but it was nearly disaster for Vargas at the pointy end of this field. But Vargas will take the lead at the line and lead his first lap officially of this SimSeats All-Star race.
And I figure right now, James, that some drivers are trying to make the outside work. Hasn't necessarily been the most effective one to open this race, but if they continue to do it like this, if they continue to go 2 wide, maybe lose some momentum, that could allow for more drivers to just come into the fray, because there's about 6 cars. The top 6 are kind of broken away from everybody else, but then you look for P7, that's Mike Clay, then there's Dylan Welch, James Bickford, Preston Pardis, Robbie Lyons, Anders Krohn. All those guys are tailing in a large group altogether, so they can start to gain some of that momentum and put themselves as a part of this. I think it's just a waiting game for that to happen as everybody between the top 6 continues to run away.
Now, those front 6 have started to line up, and they are starting to pull away from the rest of this field. There's a gap between Adam Cabot and Mike Clay to the tune of about maybe half a second or so. Not too long, only maybe 2 or 3 car lengths as you look there. James Bickford just about getting into Clay, and Dylan Welch sitting, maybe waiting for an opportunity to take it 3 wide down the front stretch. He'll tuck in behind Clay and maintain his spot for the moment being.
You know what, James? It takes a lot to get these cars sideways, like you said at the top of the show, with these radicals and the way they have a lot of downforce naturally on these cars. But one of the easiest ways to spin a car around, no matter the downforce, is the transition between the banking and the apron. And you saw James Bickford there tried to make a move underneath. He was able to successfully pass him, but he almost had a moment keeping his race car straight while making that transition. And using that apron, that comes at a very big risk, because if you use that transition in the wrong way, your car could easily get unsettled. You're at the top of 6th gear, full throttle, so any risk can definitely have a very negative impact on it. You see Anthony Alfredo going straight for the inside of Ryan Vargas, and Will Rogers going to go 2 birds with 1 stone, and he's going to go straight to the front of the pack with a couple cars to help.
More damage on the rear end of Will Rogers' machine than I initially thought. The, shall we call that the Van Halen S. Frankenstein mobile with the red and the black and the white? A pretty crumpled up rear end, so he'll need to be very careful. We might get a good shot here for the tower cam as they come across the stripe to complete lap 14, begin lap 15, but you'll see it there in the corner of your screen just how scrunched up that rear end is and how that may or may not affect Will Rogers at some point in this race. You figure maybe he comes down and burns a fast repair if he can stay up near the front and avoid other wrecks in the first half of this race.
Yeah, and guys like Adam Cabot also have similar damage to the rear end. I think it's just pretty much aggressive pushes that we're seeing right now on the track. Ryan Vargas is being very aggressive on the back bumper of Will Rogers to start this race, so that could be the reason why Rogers has a bit of that damage. Probably the same issue for Adam Cabot, that he got pushed by somebody at this point, and then he has a little bit of damage. But there it is. You see the accordion effect taking place. Now 2 wide, a couple rows deep to turn 1.
Beginning to stack up at the front now. You're starting to see the packs develop as the leaders race, and those who were about 6th, 7th, only a few laps ago, are now right there on the rear bumpers of the race leaders as Alfredo leads a train of about 4 or 5 cars into the mix, and Anders Krohn way down there on the apron trying to gain a few positions out of 4.
And Anders Krohn tried this move a little bit earlier at lap 1, and that caused the incident with Gabe Wood. Luckily, he's able to go through the D-shaped over or the quad oval just a little bit better, but now we're having 3 wide action. You see a couple cars all the way to the top, and Adam Cabot almost had a bit of a shove right there. A little bit of contact as he comes out of turn 2, but nonetheless, still side by side. Rogers and Vargas have been rather inseparable since the start of this race, and Rogers going to tail ahead to turn 3.
That was a big hip check that Brandon Brown got a little further back in the Sim Seats mobile as they get a little bit crazy in the middle of this pack. That was Preston Pardish who bounced off of another car there coming out of 4, and they continue to go 3 wide for only, the 5th position as Rogers now has the lead ahead of Vargas, but they're only 2 by 2 by 2, about 5 spots back.
And we're only on lap 18, James. That's the magic of a track and a combo like this. So you're going to have this kind of racing. It feels like it's the last lap every lap, but you're only just in the beginning portion of this race and only going to make a big question as to what's going to happen aggressivity-wise. Moving for the rest of this race, you see Anders Krohn all the way to the bottom. I think he's going to have this move stuck out. Not just yet. He's not going to have the momentum. He's going to be stuck down 3 wide. And Rogers, I think with the outside momentum, he's going to carry himself to the lead as a couple cars tangle.
Anthony Alfredo just about sent Matt Stolnick into the fence in the middle of the quad oval, and it took a tremendous display of driving from Stolnick to make sure that his number 41 didn't end up in the fence. But he lost a tremendous amount of momentum and track position. You'll get a good look and see just how it unfolded here as Stolnick, I think, almost reacted maybe more to Krohn than he did to Anthony Alfredo. But you'll see the bump right here as they come across the start finish line. Boom, right there. And did Stolnick ever have to get out of the gas to make sure that he didn't end up in trouble and in the fence. A good save. The problem is that he's now back down to 12th after running in the top 5 for the last few laps.
And that was minuscule input also, James. He got very loose with that contact with Alfredo, and then he just barely had to turn the car to the right in order to keep it straight. Look at the eyes, though. Dangerous eyes on the back of Ryan Vargas' machine as Anders Krohn, the Nicolas Cage car, has been pioneering that apron ever since the start of this race. It's going to work to his advantage for a moment. About side by side as they reach the start-finish line. Alfredo not going to elect the help. He's going to get in the grass a couple cars around.
Alfredo trying to maintain his spot on the bottom, and they all go spinning and crashing in the entry into turn 1. Mike Clay, I see involved. He's not the only one. There are about 5 or 6 other cars. Looks like one of those white machines. We'll try and recap who all was caught up in that incident, but plenty of trouble over in turn 1 to bring out our second yellow flag, Kenneth Bueno.
And a very big one indeed. It was inevitable at this point that drivers are going 3-4 wide. You see, it started right here. Anthony Alfredo tried to duck underneath Anders Krohn, but he got absolutely denied. Did not want to go in the grass, went back up on the racetrack, and ultimately made contact. Gabe Wood was one of the drivers who went up and over. You see him there with Jeff Green on his hood of his Radical. He goes tumbling. This is the second time he's been involved in a crash this evening. May have to burn another faster pair as you run on board a little bit further back. Just the contact right there as Alfredo surges back up to turn 1.
Mike Clay caught up in this. Will Rogers with damage. David Schildhouse was involved. Dylan Welch was in trouble. Matt Stolnick caught up in the fence. Drew Welker got some damage. James Bickford over in the air, actually. Brandon Brown involved in this. About 5 to 10 cars that were swept up in this. And most importantly, that should be Gabe Wood's second faster pair that he has to burn if he chooses to now.
That's going to be a big one there, and especially I think it's even worse. He's going to spend a lot of time down pit road here because you saw him flipping over and over. Worst part about his entire crash was the fact that he landed on his roof, so he has to tow it. He has to go straight to pit road with the escape button instead of actually driving into pit road and then burning off faster pair. So he has to spend a lot more time waiting for the tow to execute, and then he plays that decision of whether he really needs that fast pair. As you take more angles of this right, this is from Gabe Wood. This is not going to be a pretty sight as this car is going to go tumbling in a couple of seconds.
You can see the smoke just on the edges, and then there's not really much you can do. And it might have been Michael Massey who came across there, but just nothing Wood could have done. He was trying to tiptoe his way through the middle, and then all of a sudden a car comes to the side and just completely demolishes Wood's number 50 machine and lands us in trouble. Yellow flag is out, though, on the racetrack. Just trying to get a feel of which drivers have decided to come down pit road for service, which ones have decided to stay out. And as we recap who comes out of pit road and let them get organized, we'll remind you that tonight's broadcast of Monday Night Racing is brought to you by SimSeats. Since 2009, SimSeats has been designing and fabricating high-quality driving simulators, including motion systems, custom fabricated parts, and complete turnkey iRacing packages, all made in the United States of America. Their customer base includes all kinds of drivers, from amateurs to professionals, and their passion for racing drives them to build better sim racing equipment. Don't limit your track time to the weekend. Visit www.sim-seats.com for more information about how you can pick up your latest rig today. Pit strategy abound. Justin Prince, do you have any information from us down on pit road?
Well, when it comes to some of these drivers getting manual repairs done, Anthony Alfredo got all of his repairs done on his respective car, still has some back wing bent on his machine. He's been having one of the drivers who is saying he wants to win this race so bad and has been having a ball when it comes to being entertained on the radio. He right now is hoping that more drivers get involved in fast repairs at the moment. It was also talked about by Ryan Vargas, where he was expecting attrition to come into play. He expected to potentially use the fast repairs tonight, and talked about how it takes confidence with the pushing. He specifically mentioned the last time this combination was used, working well with Noah Lewis in particular. And knowing temperatures is going to be very vital, because drivers did blow their motors, James, in practice when trying to test pushing.
You have to be careful. These things don't cool off their engines as well as you would suspect. But most importantly, the three drivers who have stayed out and will lead this field to green when we go back racing, presumably in 2 laps time, Anders Krohn, Josh Slate, and Garrett Smithley, all have stayed out for the duration of this race. Everyone else in this field has come down pit road at some point. So Krohn, Slate, and Smithley working on the track position, everybody else working off of fresh fuel and tires. As for the drivers who have used fast repairs, we've got a few. They include Krohn and Slate, TJ Majors, James Davison, Will Rogers, James Bickford, Dylan Welch has used up one fast repair. Michael Massey has got one. Paul Sutton is down one. David Schildhaus, Mike Clay, Brett Baldeck, and Gabe Wood indeed has already used both fast repairs before we even hit the 1/3 point in this SimSeats All-Star race, Kenneth.
Yeah, and I think exactly what I mentioned, the fact that the second fast repair was the outlier, because in turn, once attrition starts to take over with the rate that we're seeing it happen, you use the first fast repair, and then it feels like you didn't even take a fast repair at all, and then it feels like the second one is pretty much the first. And with some of the early incidents we've seen, especially unfortunately with Gabe Wood, the fact that he's been involved in both major incidents tonight and that he had to already burn 2 of them means that, of course, any of the damage he picks up or any of the crash he gets involved in, then that means he's going to spend all the time down pit road. He's unfortunately probably going to DNF if that continues to happen to him. So that second fast repair is going to be very vital for these guys. If you already burned the first, wait to burn the second. Don't have something happen to the point where you really have to get rid of it and then have a pretty much troublesome race if you get more damage.
Gabe Wood's got very little room for error now. That, I think, is the biggest issue with his machine, and I wonder if he will try and sit back. But having seen Gabe race a lot, that's not in his nature to sit back and not immediately try and go to the front. You figure he's probably going to try and get back into the mix as we go back to green flag racing. It's Anders Krohn and Josh Slate that lead us to green at Texas.
Very big jump for the Norwegian out front, but you see Garrett Smithley, he's already going to have some help down low. That's the 15 of James Davison. The driver all the way at the top of the track. Joshua Slate, he's going to let everybody by, let them do all the work up front and potentially save himself from potential disaster. A bit of a shove there to James Davison as he made a move up top to Garrett Smithley. He's going to try and push him to the front of the field. Anders Krohn still using the apron down low.
Krohn on the bottom, Smithley up top, Davison there too. Who carries the momentum? Answer to that question, give it to Garrett Smithley, who will take the lead at the stripe. Davison will come in tow, will go to second, and up on the high line. How about TJ Majors? We've not called his name yet all that much, but he'll go to third.
And we talked about TJ a lot last Monday night at the Chicagoland Speedway with the Xfinity cars, and concerning the fact that he was dead in the middle of that battle for the playoffs, and he tried to make a move up top. He just had no help. He's going to let everybody come down low. That is Will Rogers, Ryan Vargas, the two who are manning the field up front, now starting to try and trot their way back. It's just about how they can work together, because they've been pretty much in a dynamic duo since the start of this race. I'm going to tag along with Anders Krohn, maybe give it a 3 versus 3 going back to turn 1 as Vargas almost sent it 3 wide. Not enough space, though.
He looked right underneath Anders Krohn, and Krohn slammed the door in his face on the entry into turn 1 as Krohn now bounces off of James Davison and then gets into Davison, and they just about went spinning across the back straightaway. It's Krohn who ends up in the fence, Davison who loses the track position, and Vargas, who will now go to second and may, with the momentum, challenge Garrett Smithley for the race lead.
And more cars now spinning near the rear of the field. 2 other cars start to go flipping to the safer barrier, trying to see exactly which cars they are as a couple more get tagged in. I see James Davison once again getting involved. Gary Sexton, he's tagged along into the inside grass. And it took a little bit there, James, right there, the incident between Davison and Anders Krohn. And then all of a sudden now it creates a domino effect coming out of turn 4 to the front straightaway.
See if we can track this back and figure out where this all starts, because there's plenty to worry about and plenty of cars that went sideways, but this started further up the racetrack. I saw Will Rogers as one of the first cars that was involved in trouble, and I believe up the racetrack was indeed the first car, at least in the field. However, this incident actually splits into 2 separate incidents as we get a better look at it, because you've got the incident between Will Rogers and Ron Capps up towards the front, and then it's Dylan Welch who makes contact with James Davison. Those 2 were the ones that you saw flying in that initial shot, and they went around a little bit further back and caught a few more of these drivers.
No, I guess we might have not seen that issue there where Will Rogers, he goes tumbling and then ends up right on his roof. That's definitely going to be a tow unless somebody can give him that extra push to flip him back over. And you'll see here from Gary Sexton's perspective, he had a nice view of that first bit of contact between Davison and Krohn, and then he's going to see a couple more cars get together at the exit of 4. You see Davison there, Dylan Welch, they're going to go set to the outside safer barrier. He's going to try and slow down for it. More flipping up ahead of him. This is the second time, James, we see Gary Sexton almost getting away, but this time not able to really escape.
So close for Gary Sexton to make it out of that, and just missed the boat by maybe a few feet at best. So Sexton already down 1 faster pair, and maybe we'll hang on to the second, maybe won't. I can tell you, though, that Will Rogers looks like he is trying to hold on to that second faster pair. He has elected to take the tow back to pit road, so he is going to try and do everything in his power to wait until the very last moment to use that faster pair. The problem is that he is already 2 laps down to the race leaders.
That's the big issue there, James. It's just such a big risk if you get involved in something like that, and even worse, if you end up in the case where you're on your roof, you can't really flip over, nothing happens, it's all a bad situation altogether, and Roger's going to have to deal with it, unfortunately.
We're going to take a quick break under the yellow flag as these drivers get regrouped. You're watching coverage of the Sim Seats All-Star Race for Season 3 of Monday Night Racing from iRacing's virtual Texas Motor Speedway on Podium Esports.
There's a place where fire and flavor are celebrated, where grilling traditions and new techniques are perfected. Here in Big Green Egg Country, you can grill it, roast it, smoke it, or bake it. It's the most versatile grill you'll ever own. Simple to light, easy to use, comes with a free lifetime warranty. Have it delivered to your door by a certified dealer in your community and start enjoying the ultimate cooking experience. Shop online for home delivery at biggreenegg.com. That's biggreenegg.com.
When you want to be the best, you can't settle for the rest. There's a reason that Maconi Setup Shop is trusted by more virtual and real-world tracks and companies than any other setup shop in iRacing. With partners such as Stafford Motor Speedway, the Nashville Fairgrounds Speedway, Five Flag Speedway, Speed 51, and more. When you want something done right, you go to the experts at Maconi Setup Shop.
With setups available for most series on both asphalt and dirt, built by a team of professional builders consisting of some of the top talents on the service, Maconi Setup Shop LLC has what you need to hit the track with confidence. Head over to MaconiSetupShop.com and learn why Maconi Setup Shop is the official setup shop of Richmond Raceway Esports and is partnered with some of the largest names in virtual and real racing.
And remember, at Maconi Setup Shop, there are setups, but your victories.
Welcome back to Podium Esports coverage of the Monday Night Racing All-Star Race from the virtual Texas Motor Speedway. James Pike, Kenneth Bueno, Justin Prince down on pit road, and Ryan Bauer, your producer for this evening's action as we get set to go green flag racing once again, this time coming lap 33 of 95, right around the third distance marker of this race. It's Garrett Smithley who will get back on the gas pedal and get us back to green flag racing.
It's start by the leader, Smithley, but it's just going to take a little bit of time before everybody, James, will start to pack in. We see the accordion effect already taking place for much of this race. And mostly everybody goes single file, and then somebody stretches it 2 wide, maybe 3 wide, and then at that point you have pretty much everybody jumbled in all together. A lot of these drivers, due to some of these incidents, have gained a lot of positions. Shane Van Gisbergen, who started at the rear of the field, got that end of line penalty that I mentioned. He's now back up to around the top 5. You see Anthony Alfredo now back in this mix. Ford Martin in the 07. We haven't talked about his name all too much here throughout this race, James, but I guess these crashes are allowing a lot of drivers who are further back in the field to survive and advance.
Which is exactly what we figured might happen at the start of this race. We talked about that you could sit in the back, and so long as you keep your car clean, just let everything cycle through, and when you get back to restarts, you can jump up from 30th to 10th. That's exactly what Ford Martin has managed to do. He now rides to the 8th spot as you get a whole face full of fish, I would guess, looking back at Ryan Vargas' goldfish machine. That's Garrett Smithley's rear deck lid you're looking off of.
And you know what I'm seeing the most out of Ryan Vargas, James, out of anybody through this field, is that he's been the pusher pretty much more than anyone else. You've seen some guys maybe give some light taps, maybe give some pushes, but Vargas has been the one completely smothering the rear bumpers of other cars. He's been very effective using this strategy. He's already gotten to the lead. He already drove Rogers up to the front, whether it be on the inside or the outside. He's done a lot of this pushing, and it really has helped. But of course, the concern will be the temperatures if they start to rise. If he starts to take note of it, and the car could possibly blow up if things go awry. But at this point, Vargas has been very, very positively impacting the way the pushes have been dealt here with the Radicals of Texas. And so far, it's pretty much been almost effective as more drivers get involved. Behind them, I believe James Bickford was able to survive, but a couple cars get tangled through. And more drivers continue to flip as the caution waves once more.
Brad Perez was one of the ones that ended up in the air on his lid, spinning over down the banking, almost Michael McDowell style into turn 1. He probably took the wildest ride out of anybody in this wreck, but we'll get a good look at this on the instant replay and see who else was swept up in this incident. All looked like it started there, that second dog leg of the quad oval, and then all of a sudden, just turning left, turning right, contact, I think, between Perez and one other driver who I could not catch at first glance, but I believe the answer to the question about Shane Van Gisbergen, current points leader in the Australian Supercars.
Yeah, I saw those two get together, and Ford Martin, who I talked about a little bit ago, that was trying to manage his way through the field. Due to all the crashes, he ends up in this incident, kind of the innocent bystander here, just running the outside. Take a look here, and I think this has been a main problem for a lot of drivers here, James. That's caused a lot of incidents. It's that little section of the quad oval, just trying to keep yourself off the grass while you're going too wide. You try to get very close if you're the driver on the outside to kind of side draft, keep yourself with the momentum, but then obviously the guy underneath you has to make sure he doesn't go straight in the grass and wreck himself, so he tries to merge back up, and then they end up getting collected. That's been the result of, I believe, 3 incidents already tonight, James.
I think We've seen a few issues where drivers cross over their apexes. It's a common issue at tracks that you have different lines that you run. And in the quad oval here in Texas, normally if you're running by yourself, you want to get right up against the grass. But when you're going 2x2, you have to compensate for that. And that can be a little bit trickier to do when you're running this quickly and with this much downforce. Different way you have to race it all together. We've seen paths cross. That's part of the reason why we've seen some incidents. As we're going to turn to our Bryant Shock Technologies in-race reporter, Steve Affont, who I think, Steve, you've just been sort of hanging out waiting for your moment. I haven't necessarily seen you be aggressive, but I think you probably don't mind it, the way this race is playing it out so far, no?
No, I generally don't get aggressive. What I like to do is hang off of the lead pack, because I'm sure you guys have seen the lead pack's been pretty wild tonight.
Has been a little bit crazy. For those who don't know you, don't know what you do, tell us a little bit about your role with Behind the Wall Media, and let us know what do you do in the racing world on a regular basis.
I work for Behind the Wall Media. We're a newer organization. The main thing, we have a YouTube channel, we have podcasts on different streaming services. It's a group of us who kind of met on the old NASCAR Heat games and just decided to have some fun with it. So
fun covering the sport, fun telling the tales, telling the stories. How intriguing has it been to be a part of this season of MNR, and how much fun has it been to see this league grow in the past year, especially since we were here last year with the Radicals in Texas?
Yeah, MNR is so much fun. I love all the different track combos. The racing with these guys every week, it makes it a blast. There's a lot of friendly rivalries, you know. People get heated, but that's part of racing, and it's awesome.
Well, Steve, we'll let you get back to it for the restart. Hopefully we'll be able to chat a little bit later with you and see how this race plays out.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Looking forward to it.
Milton, West Virginia, Steve Affont, one of a few Mountaineers in this race. Brandon Brown, also another one for Race XR. So you got a little bit of West Virginia representation in this field, and we'll see whether or not the Mountaineers can carry on and do well later on in this race. But it's a Keystoner, Garrett Smithley out of Ligonier, Pennsylvania, that has been in control of this race for the last few restarts and will assume the mantle once more, Kenneth Plato, to get us back going green flag racing on lap 39 of 95.
Yeah, Smithley has done a solid job of just holding the field together. That's what we saw with Will Rogers, the pole sitter, when we started this race. It's just a matter of blocking the guys behind you, and he's been content having guys like Ryan Vargas give him the push up to the front, keep him up there, and possibly avoid any other drivers from swinging down low or swinging up high to make any sort of moves. But it's all going to be about these restarts, and that's really what sets things up. You see guys like Smithley, guys like Rogers, they get very early starts to make sure the drivers behind them tag along, go single file, they can all push. That's what we'll probably see out of Smithley very soon here.
We'll get the one to go this time by, but as we get the one to go, we'll remind you of the upcoming events in the world of Podium Esports and iRacing throughout the next few weeks. Tomorrow night, the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series heads up north to the land of lobster and chowder, and New Hampshire Motor Speedway will be their next visit. They'll go racing at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time on the iRacing Twitch, Facebook, and YouTube channels. And then a special event, the Mark Lalonde Memorial 150, coming to the Podium Twitch channel Wednesday night at 10 p.m. Eastern. That'll feature the Xfinity cars at Chicagoland. Race number 2 of Season 4 of the SimMax Cup Series, powered by Max Pappas Innovations, coming your way from the dirt track at Bristol Motor Speedway. That broadcast Sunday night, 9:15 p.m. on the Podium Esports Twitch channel. We're back with Race 1 of the Monday Night Racing Playoffs, featuring the cars of the NASCAR Cup Series at Las Vegas next Monday night, 7:45 p.m. Eastern Time on Podium 2 Twitch channel and the Podium Facebook and YouTube channels, and the MNR Twitter, and the PCA Sim Racing Team Racing Series from Spa that Wednesday on the PCA Sim Racing YouTube channel, and the eNASCAR Road to Pro Qualifying iRacing Series from Homestead Miami Speedway next Thursday night, 9 p.m. Eastern, twitch.tv/Podium Esports, as Garrett Smithley and Ryan Vargas will lead us back to green on lap 41 of 95.
We'll see another solid jump out of Garrett Smithley as they take the green flag once more. Lap 41. There's Vargas going to slip back into second. You have TJ Majors, Adam Cabot, Anthony Alfredo all the way back to the top 5. A lot of them with more separation this time, James, and I think we've seen all night long on an initial restart. And for right now, many of them just looking to stay in the draft. No moves considerably just yet, although James Bickford has tried to get the Superman move up top on Anthony Alfredo as they head back to 3.
Bickford trying to run that high line around Alfredo and carry the momentum. The problem is that he doesn't have help, and not like these cars are particularly affected by draft, but it matters enough to where if you're running up on the outside on your own, like Bickford was, it becomes that much harder to complete the pass and get around someone.
And the only way we've seen passes up at the top of the banking, James, has been with the driver. At least one, in fact, pushing you all the way through. Vargas was one of the key examples of Will Rogers to make that move up top and try to move for the race lead. Maybe we have another duo aiming for the front of this field. Adam Cabot, TJ Majors have kind of been flirting with that top side a little bit, but as you run on board with Majors, seems to be no moves as they come out of 4 to the start-finish line once more.
TJ Majors looking for some room. Meanwhile, Justin Prince, what are drivers saying on the radio as we go back green flag racing in Texas?
It stayed pretty loose when it comes to some of the drivers on the radio when it comes to having fun because, well, many of the contenders are having fun right now and trying to keep it very positive. For others, the frustrations are starting to build up. It's also to where drivers like Vargas are dialed in and focused because drivers like Vargas are trying to execute timings of swaps, where they want drivers to run, what lines are going to be well executed. All of that's now coming into play for some of these drivers as we approach the middle of this race.
We'll see whether or not their attitudes change as we get closer to the end and closer to figuring out who's going to walk away $200 richer tonight as Vargas paces this field with Smithley and company. And again, give it 3, 4, 5 laps. We're seeing the same thing happen as the leaders go after it. The draft is significant enough to where those who are running, maybe 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, Kenneth, they're starting to bunch back up towards the front once again.
Again, the accordion effect just starting to take place, and you saw it pass for the lead while Justin Prince was talking about Ryan Vargas. He switched up to the front in front of Garrett Smithley, used the apron in 3 and 4. Now he's able to control this race for the moment. But I like what Justin said there about guys like Vargas and other guys across the radio. Some are just plan to have fun because, of course, that's what an all-star race is all about. It's all about having the most fun possible. But for guys like Vargas, they want to look for that reward. There's $200 on the line here, James, for tonight's race. If you can walk away with the checkered flag and cross the start-finish line first at the end of 95 laps. So you're probably going to be locked in if you want to have a little bit of an attempt into the end of this race. And Vargas, he's been very locked in, and I think he's proven that he is really locked in at this point as he's been able to kind of control the pace of the pack around him.
I definitely just saw the pit road entry cone flying down the front straight. Did you see that too, Kenneth? I just want to make sure I'm not crazy.
I did. You're definitely not crazy.
Which I think also underscores that the intensity is beginning to click up just a little bit here as we see drivers dropping down to the apron, coming back up top. There's James Bickford working to the inside of TJ Majors. Garrett Smithley tucked in behind Ryan Vargas, and Anthony Alfredo had a wild ride down the backstretch about a lap and a half ago. You saw it on your screens. We didn't get the chance to talk about it as it happened, but Alfredo now back to the 13th position after running within the top 5.
And what's good about the exit of turn 4 there is that you have a little bit of pavement before you inevitably get to the grass on the front straightaway. You'll see it here as you run on board with Anthony Alfredo. He goes to the banking in turns 3 and 4. Nothing out of the ordinary. But then if you go a little bit lower to get kind of the exit out of turn 4, you see that O'Reilly sign, that red pavement just before the grass hits. That's the extra bit of asphalt you have to kind of use it a little bit if you want to run the apron, if you want to have at least a little more space to gather yourself together, get back out and merge safely onto the racetrack. We'll probably see a couple drivers use that. We've already seen some, but hasn't been necessarily popular for the rest of this race. But at this point, James, we have 2 wide action. Garrett Smithley, help from James Bickford and Anders Krohn together. They're going to use the apron and swap for the race lead this time by.
Bickford goes up top, and we just crossed the halfway point of tonight's race as they came down the back straightaway that time as they wreck in front of the field. That's Ryan Vargas that goes around and bounces off the outside wall and brings out the yellow flag just about at halfway. A convenient chance for these drivers to get regrouped, but that is a very, very beat-up goldfish machine for Vargas.
And the first time, James, we see Vargas involved in a heavy incident here. Luckily, I don't think many others were involved, but a wild ride for the goldfish machine. well, goldfish necessarily belong in water. He went for the air this time by, as you'll see it off turn 4. I think it was that 3-wide move there with James Bickford. He was trying to merge back on the racetrack safely. He was around where Garrett Smithley was because he was tagged along with him. And then Bickford goes up high. Vargas tried to swoop through the middle, and there was really no space. Got kind of ping-ponged around, and then that's really what sent him. I believe one of the drivers hit him after, which sent him kind of spiraling up in the air. I'm not quite sure which driver that was, but you'll get an extra look right here just under the amount of contact he had.
I imagine that if any of the goldfish on Vargas's machine got the chance to smile back after they'd wrecked, that they'd look a little bit like hockey players where you're missing a few teeth or something to that effect, because that thing got beat up on the outside wall, and he spun around like a pinball down the front straightaway after he got turned. So still has a faster pair to play with, so not a huge worry if you are Ryan Vargas. Actually, he's both faster pairs to play with, so he could potentially burn one if he wants to. Probably will need to, given the amount of damage that he picked up, but not the worst scenario in the world for the 6 car. And if you remember, when he won this combo back in season 1, he got caught up in incidents about 2/3 of the way through this race and had to fight his way from the front to the back. But since it is midway, we'll see if we can get a feel for who is where and doing what, and where our drivers are in this field, as we bring you tonight's iRacing Midway Race Break, which as always is brought to you by iRacing, the world's premier online racing game. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat to experience today's newest form of competitive motorsport, virtual racing, all from your home PC. Race virtually in Australian supercars, IndyCar, IMSA, NASCAR, the world of outlaws, and more. Garrett Smithley, your race leader, with 50 laps complete. James Bickford in second. Anders Krohn third. James Davison holds the 4th spot. Matt Stolnick with a nice rebound after the early incident. He's 5th. Adam Cabot's been up there towards the front for most of the evening. He's 6th at the moment. 7th. A really strong run for Chris Wilner. Anthony Alfredo with a little rebound after that bobble a few laps ago. He's in the 8th spot. 9th to our BST in-race reporter Steve Affon. And rounding out the top 10 at the moment, Kenneth Bueno is number 50, Gabe Wood.
Back to the P11, you'll find the number 20 of David Schoedhaus running in that position with Robbie Lyons behind him in the 19. He's in P12 with Will Rogers, our pole sitter, the Hawaiian, currently sitting in P13. Ford Martin, an early incident, used up the fast pair. He's up to 14th now on the racetrack, with Joshua currently rounding out the top 15 at the cross flag section. TJ Major is currently P16, with Dylan Welch 17th. Brandon Brown to P18. The 19th will belong to the 27 of Michael Massey, and Seth Eggert in the 57 will cap off the top 20 so far, James.
21st is where you'll find Justin Melillo. Brett Baldeck runs in the 22nd position. 23rd belongs to Ron Capps, and Ryan Vargas, after that incident, is scored in 24th. Kerry Sexton holds the 25th spot. 26th goes to Brad Perez. Preston Pardis runs in the 27th position. 28th at the moment belongs to Paul Sutton. 29th to SVG Shane Van Gisbergen. He's the first and only car 1 lap down at this stage. Mike Clay is 3 laps down in 30th, and Drew Welker some 16 laps down in 31st. And that completes tonight's iRacing Midway Race Break. With over 170,000 drivers on the service and over 90 laser scan tracks and cars to choose from, iRacing is your portal to the racing world. Get on track today at iRacing.com. And we always like to talk a little bit about what's new in iRacing when we get the chance to talk about the Midway Race Break. And worth noting that one of the newest pieces of content in the service, Nashville Super Speedway, going to play host to a playoff race for Monday Night Racing in a few weeks with the Super Late Model, which is an intriguing one to me, Kenneth Bueno. But I have a hunch that that could be really good, especially if you get it geared right. You let the folks at Maconi Setup Shop and Jeff Maconi put together something for the drivers to go out there and battle with.
It could, and what's even more interesting about that race, James, is the fact that we already had a super late model race to kind of get a benchmark of how these drivers are adapted to those high-powered stock cars when we visited the Gateway, or at least Worldwide Technology Raceway at Gateway with those cars. So to add Nashville Super Speedway, very interesting, very prolific, 1.333 concrete oval, to put that there with also very powerful cars in the super late models, that's going to be a lot of fun. We saw a lot of drivers sideways, James, at Gateway. We're probably going to see a lot more drivers get sideways once we reach Nashville. And to be even more critical of the fact that it's in the playoffs, I think that's going to make these drivers prepare a little more and probably be able to pull up the intensity to a higher level.
It'll be intriguing to see, especially since that super late model and the reader that we got in March comes amidst a stretch in which a lot of the new cars on iRacing have been very well hailed by the community. I think that really kicked off, especially with the Dallara P217, the prototype that represents the LMP2 class and is most similar to the Daytona prototype international class in IMSA racing, so that's gotten a lot of use in iRacing. But a lot of the cars that have come out since have gone up high in the rankings amongst best cars that are available in the service. You could also certainly add the 1987 Ford Thunderbird and Chevrolet Monte Carlo stock cars that we will also use in the season of Monday Night Racing in that bucket as well. Restart to come momentarily. Lights off on the pace car. Lap 54 gonna go up on the board of 95. Garrett Smithley right where he's been for these last few restarts. And can we get a green flag run long enough for someone to unseat the 52 out of the race lead?
We'll just have to see. Green flag gets displayed. Smithley again with a solid controlling jump. Bickford, much like Vargas did in P2, he's going to slam himself down low in front of Anders Krohn, Adam Cabot, Matt Stolnick, and Anthony Alfredo up to the top 6. Everyone's going to stay single fire here, James. But as soon as either the temperatures start to raise or the patience start to run out, they're going to swoop to the inside. And there comes Superman at the bottom of the racetrack. He's going to swoop away the race lead from the 52 is Smithley. Anders Krohn going to give him that help. We'll see if they have a solid run. Now here comes Cabot with a crossover to the bottom as well.
What a big move from James Bickford to go get the race lead and get underneath Garrett Smithley, who will get boxed in behind the 29, and Anders Krohn is down to the inside, and Krohn may take away the lead from Bickford and will as they go through 1 and 2.
And that's the trade-off there, like we talked about. Coming out of turn 4, if you use the apron, it's kind of going to stall out coming out of the corner. That's what happened with Bickford. Got trapped up top, and that allowed Anders Krohn, who was kind of looking for that white line all the way down low, to keep that momentum, have the help from both Cabot and Alfredo respectively, and have a bit of run all the way to the front. But there was about contact there, door-to-door, between Bickford and Anthony Alfredo as Adam Cabot found his way to the bottom side of the racetrack. He's going to make a move underneath the 47 of Anders Krohn, and again, a new race leader, the 17 of Adam Cabot to turn 2.
Might have been a little bit of payback there from Anthony Alfredo. It was a similar kind of hit check that Bickford gave him a few laps ago that sent Alfredo high up on the back straightaway as they now punch up behind Adam Cabot, who's going to get stuck in the middle of a 3-wide sandwich for the race lead.
And now Anthony Alfredo going to use that apron. The question is, will he be able to hold on to the race lead? The answer seems to be yes. But look at that camera from the rear end of his car. Everybody's swarming 3 wide to the start-finish line.
How they managed to keep it off each other, at least for a lap, I'm not sure, but you've got some skill up at the front. James Bickford there, Adam Cabot, who won the ERL to get into Season 3 of Monday Night Racing. Anders Krohn, who's had some speed. Here comes Matt Stolnick back on the inside as Bickford goes down to the bottom once again, and maybe he'll move Alfredo or just get underneath Alfredo to go to the point.
And we're seeing more cars now, James, on this restart use the apron. We saw maybe 2 or 3, maybe 4 cars use the apron in sort of sporadic moments, but it seems as though they're all coming down there together. Alfredo, very aggressive, swerving all the way across the racetrack to try and find some space as they reach back to turn 1. Drivers now with a move up top. Adam Cabot gonna have some help from Anders Krohn. Doesn't seem to be a big issue just yet. Everybody's gonna swarm directly to the inside wall, and here comes Alfredo through the middle.
How about James Bickford, who has no interest in letting anyone get underneath him on the apron? As soon as they came out of turn 2, he was on the wall, and that's going to allow Adam Cabot to go to the outside and take over the race lead for the moment. But they're getting 2 wide. They're getting 3 wide. That's maybe, 2-3 rows deep there, where it's 3 by 3 by 3, almost 9-10 cars packed in amongst the top 12 or 13.
And I think Bickford, if he uses that bottom and protects it all the way to the inside wall, nobody's going to take advantage of him. Sure, there may be a move up top, but it won't necessarily be too dangerous as this time it's going to switch, and Adam Cabot gets turned in front of the field. I believe that was Anders Krohn. Big hit up to the outside wall as Bickford goes completely sailing over the track. Caution flag waves. We were looking at about 3 wide, a couple rows deep, James, and we usually look for yellow flags at that point, and we found it.
That was coming. for about maybe 2 or 3 laps in advance of when the incident actually took place. Cabot and Crone get together in the middle of the screen. You'll see Cabot there leading up that middle line, and you'll get a look there right as you come across the digger cam. Cabot didn't actually go around for a while. It took a minute for him to get properly spun off the nose of Anders Crone, but when he did, he got a decent amount of damage. The wildest ride, though, however, went to that red machine up top. Couldn't quite catch who that was initially, but a big hit. I believe the answer to that question is going to be, the survey says, how about Chris Wilner, who had a really hard shunt into the outside of the wall in between 3 and 4.
And you'll see it on board. He was actually carrying the cone. We saw the cone flying, James, a little bit earlier. He was pretty much bringing the cone along for the ride here as everything went sailing in front of him. He actually is able to miss the wreck, but then he gets a bit of contact as one of the drivers goes up the track, and then he goes sailing into the outside wall. It has a wild ride. We saw James Bickford going flying. We're going to take another look at that as they were coming into 3 and 4. But this is not the situation you wanted to be in if you want Anders Crone, James, because he had already burned up both his faster pairs en route to the front of the pack here on this restart. So to have more damage from this without him, Cabot, definitely not the situation he wants to see. As you'll take another look at it.
We saw how aggressive the driving got on that particular green flag run. Justin Prince, what were the drivers saying about the increased intensity in the race?
It was more so at the time of the incident where several drivers were saying to hold their brakes, as in not let the cars roll down the banking. So the tempers were starting to flare about that. A couple were getting nervous about fellow competitors at that exact time of the incident, within seconds of said incident, in fact. So things were getting dicey and nerve-wracking for some of the drivers up front with that hard racing.
From what you've been able to tell, Justin, does it seem like the drivers are getting more anxious, more nervous as we approach the end of this race? Are you seeing a noticeable change in attitude amongst the drivers you're watching as we get closer to the checkered flag?
Well, I've noticed with the faces, especially of the drivers, too, on the respective streams, that they went from laughing, joking around to a lot more smiles to being what we normally see for a major race in Monday Night Racing. Very serious by this point of the race. So they are starting to get to where a lot of competitors are getting to the serious tone now of the race as we're approaching the closing stages.
Getting ever more intense here at iRacing's virtual Texas Motor Speedway in the Season 3 All-Star event for Monday Night Racing, the SimSeats All-Star race from the virtual Texas Motor Speedway. A reminder that tonight's broadcast on Podium Esports is brought to you by our friends at Big Green Egg, the world's largest producer and international distributor of the highest quality ceramic Commodore-style charcoal grills. Big Green Egg has spent over 40 years mastering the best, most versatile, fuel-efficient, and easy-to-use Commodore-style grills across the globe. And with an Egg, there's no need for a separate grill, smoker, pizza oven, or rotisserie device, because the Egg does all of this and more to perfection. For more information, you can visit their website at biggreenegg.com. Also of note, as we begin to work our way into the late stages of tonight's event, Kenneth Bueno, you start looking down this list, and we've got a column here that allows us to see how many faster pairs these drivers have used. And at the beginning of this race, it was a lot of zeros up and down that column, but now it almost looks like I'm reading binary code, because I see zeros and then ones and ones and twos and ones and zeros and ones. But a few cars dinged up and a few faster pairs burned up already.
Yeah, a lot of fast pairs have been burned up already, James. And to note, the only driver in the top 10 that has not burned off a single fast pair at all, still has 2 fast pairs available to him, is the driver that's currently holding control of the race lead, the Oreo car, Anthony Alfredo. He's somehow been able to survive. He does have a little bit of damage, but it just does not affect him to the point where he needs to burn a fast pair. The only other driver outside of him that has not burned a fast pair since the start of this race, you have to look back to P11. Justin Malillo, his Traction G number 53 machine, has also not seen any fast pairs throughout this entirety of 63 laps tonight. So those guys probably have the upper hand already, knowing that they have not burned a fast pair. I don't want to jinx them, though, on this restart, because we've seen chaos strike everybody, and really not everybody is really able to escape. Doesn't matter who you are.
Cars are lined up, everybody working their way down the backstretch and getting set for the restart that this time will come on lap 64 of 95, inching towards 30 laps to go. And a little reminder coming across race controls airwaves from the man up high on the tower, Josh Mendoza, for these drivers to just, be mindful, be careful of where you are, race hard, but race smart, and most importantly, make sure that you have a car to race at the very end of this. We will likely not see all of these drivers make it to the end. Probably going to start looking at a few eliminations by virtue of lack of fast repairs coming up here. We're going to see drivers in spots where they could have used the third, but we've only got two, as Anthony Alfredo leads us back to Green Flag Racing in Texas.
At the Green Flag Racing, I saw a little bit of a shunt there by Anthony Alfredo. Was not able to get the restart he wanted, and that allowed James Davison to kind of hold on. He's not going to tuck anymore behind the race leader. He's going to try and make a move up top. Maybe some help with Will Rogers. He's a couple car lengths back, but maybe he can use some of that drafting, be able to get some help. Ryan Vargas, like we've seen all race long, familiar sight, him pushing the race leader hard up to the front of this field. But one more challenger edges up down low, James. That's Matt Stolnick trying to make use of the apron.
Stolnick making his way back to the front as he was earlier in this race. Same for Will Rogers, who's out of fast repairs. But I think he and Vargas and a handful of others up here are very much in the mindset that the best way to avoid incidents is to be out in front of them. And that's why we're seeing them make their moves back to the front so quickly. You can do it now, but when everybody is trying to get up there later, it'll be a little bit more difficult.
Yeah, it can get very dicey, especially with the fact that we talked about it just before we went green, the fact that many of these drivers don't have fast repairs left. So whatever incident they get into, they're going to be stuck down pit road for a lot of time, and they're going to lose a bunch of laps. They're going to obviously lose track position, and ultimately they're going to lose the $200 that they have a chance to win here tonight. So you have to be a little more careful. You're these guys kind of trotting and sprinting your way up through the field once more to have a chance to win with 30 laps to go. You have to be a little more cautious of where everybody is, what kind of placement each car is at, what lanes are they running, if they're using the apron, where they're sliding up, where they're checking up. And there's so many factors to bring into here, James, that these drivers have now pretty much start to worry about at this point. I guess no worries for Ryan Vargas up front, though. He uses the apron in 3 and 4 to take over the race lead this time.
Vargas in front, Alfredo second, Davison now up to third, and Stolnick fourth. But the battle's really about, maybe 7th, 8th. Brandon Brown, Will Rogers, that area of this track. As you go on board with Ron Capps, he's just ahead of it. But you look back there, you see just how mad it's getting. Everybody trying to claw their way for some piece of real estate in the top 5.
Yeah, it is getting dicey up here. You see 3 drivers up at the top trying to make use of some of the banking here in turns 3 and 4. That's Will Rogers, Gary Sexton, and I believe Dylan Welch in the 14. We saw him in an incident earlier tonight. He tries to make use of the high line. Saw Brad Perez up top, and he actually gets spun down low. He's able to save it, able to be right there to pit road. Luckily, both of those cars able to keep themselves straight. No significant damage, and we stay green.
They spun off the racing line, they spun out of harm's way, and we indeed stay Green Flag Racing in the SimSeats All-Star Race at iRacing's virtual Texas Motor Speedway. But that really spread out this group, and you've got about maybe the top 10, and then everybody else. That gap, you slide all the way back to maybe a Gary Sexton and Dylan Welch, and there's plenty of space as you watch these drivers go at it amongst the top 10.
That's the thing with a track like Texas, James, the fact that it's so wide, and even with any normal car that you have to slow down, you have to lift, you have to put in some brake, it's also a very narrow track, despite how wide it is naturally because of the way SMI kind of produced this racetrack and repaved it and also reconfigured it a couple years back. But with these radicals, you have to be all the way down to the bottom. So it already narrows the kind of playing field you have default when you start this race. So it gets very tenuous up at the front because you want to use that apron, you want to use that space, but then the space starts to run out, and if you search up higher on the racetrack, you're pretty much going to find nothing at all to get any sort of run on any other driver up in front. So everybody's just tucked down low, and you can already see just how narrow it is, even with the apron as well.
And how much these drivers are lifting. Good example there from Justin Malillo coming off the back straightaway. Had to get out of the gas just a bit to make sure that he didn't run into the car in front of him, as we're seeing these drivers begin to work their way up. But a nice run for Justin, who we mentioned earlier, we figured he might be waiting for his moment to make the charts. I think that's exactly what's happened with the 53. Started in 19th, up to 8th last time by at the line.
And Malula, we talked to him last week. Unfortunately, was not able to make the Monday Night Racing playoffs. But when I talked with him going into this race, he said this was going to be a lot of fun. We're probably going to see a lot of big pack racing. That's exactly what we've been able to see. And tonight, like many other drivers, the attitude was just going to be here and try to go guns blazing and have as much fun as possible instead of taking this very seriously. Relax a little bit after what has been a very tough 9 races to start this season before the playoffs begin here in a couple weeks' time. So at that point, Malillo's doing a very good job of at least surviving. Talk about him having no fast repairs burned off. So at least in terms of his case, he's very, very well set. If anything happens to be chaotic up at the front of this field as Ryan Vargas tries to take a look at second.
We apologize for any of those who are watching out for the cone, as there was a hit check there a little bit further back, but we've seen the pit cone get just about annihilated every which way possible, which I think speaks to the extent that these drivers are trying to use every little piece of this racetrack. But more importantly, Justin Prince, hearing a little bit more about water temperatures rising with some of the engines on these cars for these drivers.
Yes, indeed. That was a talking point in before the start of tonight's race, where drivers could risk blowing up if they got too hot, as talked about a little bit earlier. Drivers are already in the high 250s in the main pack on their temperatures and communicating over the radio, okay, I need to swap to make sure they don't overheat right now. That's where the move with Alfredo now with the lead came into play.
And Alfredo now to the front, which could be a big advantage if you can keep your car clean. You want the run, you're going to have to get behind somebody, and I think that may matter as we see one car slow on the apron. We'll get a look at what happened as they continue to race for the lead, but trouble, it looks like for Ron Capps, who, just got turned to the inside and smacked the fence, but stayed out of the racing line. So again, we say green flag racing.
He saw him pound the inside wall, and he said over the radio, thank you, I appreciate it, just in case of what happened there. But look at the chaos that's happening up at the front of this field. Anthony Alfredo got the lead swapped over as James Davison took a look down low. There were about 4 wide coming into turn 1. They're able to keep it clean. No moves down low just yet for the moment up front. And Anthony Alfredo has a huge run of help from Preston Pardis on the top side of the banking.
So many drivers beginning to work that apron. Davison is down there. Crone is down there like he's been just about all night. But you lose all that momentum and you see what Anthony Alfredo can do. Look at what Preston Pardis can do. They can stay in the gas in the banking and get a car length or 2 coming out of the corner. So Alfredo back to the point. Pardis back to second. Davison falls to third. And Crone finds his space just underneath SVG in 4th.
And there's a big question here, and a big debate about patience and watching for the temperatures. As Justin talked about, a lot of these drivers are concerned with the way the temperatures are rising in their cars. They don't want to blow up before this race is over. But then at the same time, you kind of a little patient, but maybe not so patient as James Davison gets turned. A couple more cars get collected. That's Anthony Alfredo tumbling over and over. That's definitely a fast repair to be used. Luckily lands on all 4 wheels, but James, we have a pivotal caution with under 20 to go.
That felt like one that changed things pretty significantly, especially since it's not the first incident we've seen over the course of the evening, where this started a little bit before the incident really properly broke out. Coming out of the exit of 4, there was contact, looks like, I think, that might have been Anders Crone and Anthony Alfredo in the middle of 3 and 4. Actually, James Davison and Anthony Alfredo that make contact. Well, actually, Crone, who makes contact with Davison, who then gets into Alfredo off of that bounce. And then it's Davison and Crone that go up the racetrack, and it was Davison who went around off the nose of Dylan Welch. That's really where this all kicks off. And then Welch goes sideways. He, I believe, is the one who ended up hitting Anthony Alfredo, who, just had nowhere to go there at all.
You were talking a little bit earlier about the cone and the poor cone getting hit every time. He definitely got hit very hard by James Davison as they were coming out of turn 4. Take a look with Dylan Welch. There he gets into Davison. There the cone gets struck once more. It's pretty much sailing. I don't know how many miles per hour, how fast it's going specifically through the grass, but Welch definitely goes for a wide, and I believe many drivers are already going to either burn off their last fast repairs, and for Alfredo, it's going to be for his first. Just a big piece of carnage coming to the quad oval.
Yeah, big moment there. It was actually Shane Van Gisbergen that got into Anthony Alfredo, and that will be Van Gisbergen's second fast repair, no question. Just trying to get a sense of who is down and out of fast repairs and who's already burned through 2 fast repairs. We're at the point where we can start taking some names out of the equation, I think, and we can start writing off drivers who don't have fast repairs left and have to run the rest of this race with whatever damage they have.
Yeah, they certainly have to ride around here with whatever they have. Will Rogers, I saw him. He had burned both of his fast repairs. He stuck down pit road trying to repair the rest of his car. And there's also now just notable drivers with both fast repairs ripped off that are now gaining positions. We talk about guys like Gabe Wood, had a very struggled evening with some of those incidents, burned off both, and now he's got a clean car. So I guess even with 18 to go, even if you burned off both fast repairs, you can still be okay relatively.
I think we're entering a situation where you may not have a completely clean car win this race just by virtue of the way this racing is. It's so tight, it's so close, it's so testy, and there's so many drivers who are going to end up with some sort of ding or dent or scratch that having a clean car is going to be a premium, but it might not necessarily be a necessity in order to come away with the checkered flag. We'll see how it pans out as we enter the final 15 laps of tonight's SimSeats All-Star Race. A reminder that tonight's broadcast here on Podium Esports is brought to you by Maconi Setup Shop, your home for iRacing setups and the official setup shop of Richmond Raceway Esports. From Legends to Cup cars, we have you covered, with dirt setups available for late models, modifieds, and wing sprint cars as well. At Maconi Setup Shop, there are setups, but your victories. And their newest book, How I Drive, features a foreword from MNR competitor Anthony Alfredo and is now available on the MSS website. You can come learn from the pros how to be the best driver you can be in sim racing. Visit their website at MaconiSetupShop.com for more information. Justin Prince, any updates over the course of the last few moments since we had that last green flag run?
Well, for many of the drivers, the serious tone continuing right now, and that's the main focal point for drivers is survival. There were a few drivers concerned about the aggressiveness at the time with there being 20 laps to go, including Anthony Alfredo. He was very nervous and was trying to start to drop back a little bit right before door-to-door contact started and that whole incident ensued. So a couple drivers were thinking about that, but you have to think that intensity level is going to pick up even more from here.
The intensity level is indeed going to ratchet maybe 3, 4, 5 times what we've seen in advance of the rest of the evening, as we get set to bring you the final moments of this SimSeats All-Star Race. James Pike, Kenneth Bueno, Justin Prince down on pit road. Ryan Bauer, our producer this evening with cameras courtesy of Dougie Beard. Getting set for what will unquestionably be a wild and woolly last 15 laps. I suppose the how question that we are all trying to answer. I can tell you that Anders Krohn, though, will be your race leader coming to the restart. First time we've heard a new name in a while, as Krohn and Pardis will lead us to green from the outside and the inside, respectively.
It's going to be an interesting decision here to use the outside of row number 1, because we've seen Krohn all night long use the inside, and I mean the most inside with the apron, especially in 3 and 4. So maybe a strategic move by Krohn here within the final 15 laps of this race. We'll just have to see as the pace car rolls off.
Waiting on the gas pedal. Oh, big moment there as Pardis ditched Krohn and just left him completely in the dust. Opened up maybe a car length and a half or 2, and it was not a good restart for Anders Krohn, and maybe even worse for a few company back there. TJ Majors and some of these other drivers struggling to make moves from the high side.
And some of them were blocking potential runs up top. TJ Majors kind of swerved up. Nobody went up to his outside, and nobody was going to give him the challenge going to turn 1. Good news for him. He's able to clear all of that pressure for now, but there is a lot of pressure up at the front of this field, especially now underneath TJ Majors, because here comes James Bigford now back into the picture in P4.
Bigford, what about Brandon Brown coming on the outside lane to go door-to-door with Anders Krohn for second as they look to go 3 wide just a bit further back, but the run will fade out for Brandon Brown. He'll have to either tuck in front of somebody or back in line, and now Krohn's going to have the opportunity to go to the inside, and Pardis right on cue, already down to the wall all the way to block Krohn's favorite lane.
And now we're seeing more drivers here, James. Use that outside lane. Guys are getting grouped up. You ride on board with Gary Sexton. He's been the one most recently to kind of use that outside lane. Almost about 3 wide. Almost contact between Brown and Garrett Smithley. But they're able to stay clean. Now we have potential. A second line finally using itself in an efficient manner, because here comes James Bickford, going to swap down low. He's going to take control of this race with 13 laps to go.
Bickford had that run up high and then gives it right back to Preston Pardus. So he's going to let Pardus go down to the inside, and it's the first time that we've really seen anybody decide to let the inside go. So how does this pan out for James Bickford and Preston Pardus? Pardus is going to try and slide up, and Bickford read that beautifully and moved up top as soon as Pardus reclaimed his spot on the inside line. Bickford playing the momentum at will to maintain the race lead. He might be onto something here, Kenneth.
And you saw Anders curl and look under 3 wide, and now contact between him and TJ Majors. Both of them able to save their race cars respectively. Still clean as they come out of turn 2. Now here comes Ryan Vargas. 4 wide as they head to turn 3.
Oh, this could get very, very, very messy very quickly. But for the moment, they're hanging on. And for the moment, look at Paul Sutton. We've not called his name at all. As one car bounces off the fence, he'll stay in it. We'll stay green flag racing. And Paul Sutton running as high as he has all season in MNR. He's up to second as we work to 10 to go.
And he came absolutely out of nowhere. That's how this racing can change in a matter of seconds. He was kind of helping within the draft, helping within the first and second lanes, and it's all just about waiting for the right position. And now his car right to the back bumper, that Superman mobile and James Bickford. Now here comes guys back into the picture. We saw Adam Cabot getting spun around in the front of the field by Anders Krone in turn swing 4. He's now back up to P3. Ryan Vargas back to P4. Preston Pardus, he ends up falling back to P5 with Melillo and Sexton now charging for position.
How quickly do they get bunched back up again? How quickly do they return to 2 and 3 wide racing? And as they do that, Justin Prince, what are you hearing on the radios as we enter the closing stages of the race?
Well, for Anthony Alfredo, he is now one of those drivers that is getting frustrated a little bit after he couldn't get back on the racetrack. He was that car you've seen in the grass. He is reporting significant damage as a result of that situation. TJ Majors also reporting he's got damage as well. But it should be worth noting that one of the drivers who is up in the mix again, Ryan Vargas, he said he is either winning this thing or wrecking. So keep an eye on Vargas.
Vargas, who last time we ran with this combo was the race winner. Also of note, only driver in the top 10 who has not used a fast repair tonight. That 53 from Port Jefferson Station, New York, of Justin Melillo. Might want to keep an eye out on the 53 in these last 10 laps, as Bickford now really seems like he's got it going with that top lane. He's managed to figure out how to work the momentum, and he's not going to the bottom. He's just staying up there and letting everybody else get the run. You may have to get lined up and go to the outside to get around Bickford's Superman mobile, because that thing looks like it might have had a little kryptonite added to it, the way he's controlling this field.
He's really been able to control this field, and he's playing it the right way. He notices that drivers underneath the apron, they can't get the momentum out of turn 4 respectively. So using the banking, using more of that momentum, he's able to kind of swing by, able to get it, but he makes contact side by side with Preston Pardus. That slowed his run down, and all of a sudden, Superman's going to fall in the midst of the entire pack, as look who's back up front. Ryan Vargas, the Goldfish mobile, smiling at the head of this field now.
Was about to say that Bickford bit on the bait that Vargas offered. He just shaded Bickford to the inside going into 3, and Bickford killed his momentum to get down on the bottom. And now here comes Shane Van Gisbergen to the inside. And the question is, who can keep the motor wound up top to keep those drivers who come from the bottom to the top at bay? That is the question. But Van Gisbergen up front for the moment. But here comes Vargas with a run on the outside.
But we'll see if Vargas can kind of hold on to this, because we've seen 1 or 2 cars kind of fall through. They're not really able to hang on with the guys at the top of this pack. Vargas, especially with the lack of help. Only Josh, or Steve Alfar rather, in the 11. He's the only one up top helping him. No other drivers have kind of kept up and try to make things stick. Vargas is going to find the space down low between, I believe that's Joshua Slate and the driver right behind him in Melillo down low, so they're able to make some of that space work. And Vargas going to work up to 3rd. Preston Pardus sliding a bit up the track, but SVG still in control with 5 to go.
SVG's got a good run going here as Josh Slate looks for an opening. Ryan Vargas looking for an opening, and there's just nowhere for them to go yet, as we're watching Van Gisbergen tweak his line a little bit. and he goes down to the bottom of the racetrack to keep everybody behind him. One car wrecking a little bit further back, but we'll say green flag racing, and this is equally intriguing as here comes Josh Slate to the inside to make a move.
And this is interesting. He made it through the middle of 3 and 4, and he's actually going to make it stick. Have some help from Vargas and Preston Partis to give. And all of a sudden, we have a brand new race leader once more. Joshua Slate now to the bottom of the racetrack. Van Gisbergen with absolutely no help up to the top. And now we're seeing a lot more separation, James. So now this poses the question, once we get to the final 3 laps of this race, do we see the accordion effect start to bunch up the field once more? Or do we see the separation take over for the rest of this race till the checkered flag? For now, the second option seems to be the best as Vargas goes down low. He's going to swap back, and he goes back up front.
You have a Californian, a Virginian, and a New Zealander racing in the top 3 of Monday Night Racing. Only in MNR are you going to find something like that as SVG goes back to the bottom, and we'll bring Preston Partis until under 2 and maybe call it 2/3 of a lap less as Vargas gets shifted high.
And it's the first time Vargas has been kind of up there throughout this entire stint on the restart, so he can't necessarily use the apron unless somebody else goes down with him. He's going to stick up top to the banking, near about the apron. Meanwhile, top 3 going to run down there. They're going to catch 2 laps to go here, James. And what does Preston Partis do? Does he try to tag along the rest of the field, or does he try to go solo? We'll try to find out.
They are trying their best to wreck from about 5th on back. We may get a green-white checker before we get the white flag here, but Van Gisbergen's still in control, and everybody else in the top 5 going to have to figure out some way to line up and get SVG uprooted from that bottom. That's the only way. I think they're going to get around the 97 and find a way to win this race on their own.
I think they're waiting right now, James. You're seeing Shane Van Gisbergen able to control. I think nobody is going to have this move until it's all said and done. Caution, though, waves as they were about to reach the Maconi setup shop. 1 to go, James. Some cars flipping near the exit of turn 4. And this will ultimately change the race. You said it there. We had a possibility of a green-white checkered. Well, we finally have it. Give it to us.
James Bickford, Ford Martin, 2 of the 3 that went flying in every sense of the word over into the fence in turn 3. There was one more car, I think, that was initially swept up in that incident. Couldn't immediately tell who it was, but Bickford and Martin for sure part of the group. Anders Krohn, the 3rd driver, that went up into the wall over by turn 4 and puts us under the yellow flag, which will give us a green-white checker finish. Are you shocked, Kenneth, at the end of it all?
No. That's a certain answer. No.
So, same way you weren't shocked in the way that Giannis dropped 40 last night in the finals, right?
No, also not. I was not surprised in that. But we could talk about that a little bit later. But you'll take another look at the incident there for Bickford, Anders Krohn, Ford Martin. It's so tough for guys like Krohn. They had already burned off both their fast repairs. So landing on their roof to end this race certainly isn't the sight you want to see. And ending this race most likely down pit road out of all places. You'll see it once more, just emerged from the apron. Actually, the contact happened, James, on the apron and then sailed up to the racetrack. I think that's the first time we've seen this in the entirety of this race. I reckon we were probably going to see it earlier in this event, but you'll take a look with Gary Sexton. He has a nice view of this shot with James Bickford as he gets hit right about there as Bickford comes down the track. And they come sailing back up, and Sexton, luckily, able to avoid it this time.
To be honest, just watching how that panned out, I have no idea how Gary Sexton managed to escape that without any sort of damage, but I know he won't complain. But that does kill Bickford's race. His race is done. Anders Krohn is done. Ford Martin most likely also done for the night. I think he was out of fast repairs when that incident happened. And the one driver that you don't want to have in the lead is the one that gets to lead you to green-white checker because he's won more races than anybody else in this season of Monday Night Racing. Remind you that tonight's broadcast of MNR here on Podium Esports is brought to you by the all-new Fox Sports app that's changed the game. From the top moments, breaking news, original content, and live sports, you can find it all on the Fox Sports app. Follow your favorite team or sport with mobile alerts right on your device, and you can download the all-new Fox Sports app in the App Store or on Google Play. The Fox Sports app. Get it. Use it. Love it. And be ready for a crazy restart, the likes of which I don't think we see all that much in Monday Night Racing. But before we go to the restart, Justin Prince, words from the drivers, thoughts coming over radio. give us a picture of where these drivers are mentally entering these final few laps.
For a lot of the drivers, it's been essentially dialed in focus. For others, like Gary Sexton, they are still surprised about what happened, including cars flying over top of them. For others, they continue to have smiles and stay loosened up right now. So it's a big spectrum, James, right now, of competitors in terms of where their focus is at the radio. But it's going to be interesting how this finish comes down. As talked about, Vargas is very motivated to take the checker flag here, so keep an eye, I think, on him.
Vargas, who did very literally say it was going to be checkers or wreckers for him. Probably not the only one with that sort of mentality, as the lights should go off the pace car this next time by, and we should go green flag racing for our first attempt at a green-white checker. Emphasis on the first because mathematically probability is pretty high that it won't be the last green-white checker. However, probability is very certain that we've got more events coming up in the world of Podium Esports and iRacing over the course of the next week, and that continues with the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series from New Hampshire Motor Speedway, coming at you tomorrow night, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time for your pre-race on the iRacing Twitch, Facebook, and YouTube channels. Then head to the Podium Esports Twitch channel for the Mark Malone Memorial 150, featuring the Xfinity cars at Chicagoland Speedway. That'll be Wednesday night. Next Sunday night, it's the SimMax Cup Series powered by MPI from the dirt track at Bristol Motor Speedway on the Podium Esports Twitch channel at 9:15 p.m. Eastern Time start for that. Then we're back with the first race of the MNR playoffs featuring the NASCAR Cup Series machines at Las Vegas Motor Speedway, 7:45 p.m. for pre-race, 8 p.m. for race broadcast coverage. That's on the Podium 2 Twitch channel, the Podium Facebook and YouTube pages, and the MNR Twitter. PCA Sim Racing's Team Racing Series returns round 3 from Spa coming your way on the PCA Sim Racing YouTube channel next Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern, and then next Thursday night, the eNASCAR Road to Pro qualifying iRacing Series from Homestead Miami Speedway, 9 p.m. Eastern Time on the Podium Esports Twitch channel. That's what's coming up. Here's what's happening right in front of you. It is Shane Van Gisbergen in control of this. A reminder, if we get the white, then we will race back to the checkered. If we get a yellow before we get the right, we will throw the caution flag and stack them up and try and make them go again as Van Gisbergen gets on the gas, and we are back underway with what could be the final restart in the SimSeats All-Star race at Texas.
Back under green, a big shot to the front by Shane Van Gisbergen, able to separate himself by a couple car lengths, but here comes Pardis, Vargas, Slate, Perez, everybody else through this large pack, and immediately a move up top on the 90 of Pardis. He's going to swing up high, no help as Vargas sticks down low. They're going to head back to 3 and 4 and take the Maconi setup shop, 1 to go from Texas.
Vargas had the option to go with Pardis, and the question will be whether or not he regrets not carrying that momentum high and going with Pardis, because Van Gisbergen is still in control as we hit the Maconi setup shop, 1 to go. One more time for SVG.
And Vargas gets spun right in the front of the field. He goes flipping. More cars go flipping. Pardis is able to escape. Shane Van Gisbergen with a wild ride. So does Gary Sexton. Many cars involved, but it does not matter. At the front of this field, many more drivers trying to survive for the moment. And here they come back to 3 and 4.
This could get crazy. Brad Perez up top, Preston Pardis down low. The friends coming out of 4 for the final time. They'll slide up there, and Perez is going to go high. And Brad Perez, out of absolutely nowhere, will win this race from I don't know how deep in the field on the restart, but it's Brad Perez who comes away with the victory in the SimSeats All-Star race. And somehow, some way, we're going to have to go back and see that in full, because he was nowhere near the front when we took the green flag to start the green-white checker.
How do we even comprehend this, James? Take a look at this. You'll see it here. Perez was running in the midst of the top 10. You see he has a look there from Vargas, and of course Shane Van Gisbergen. It's going to start as they enter turn 1 and 2. He gives a shot to Preston Pardis. Seems to be okay. They reach the white flag. It's going to start as Vargas gets turned here on the front straightaway. You're going to see him get a bit of a bump. You're going to see him slowly fade out to the left side of your screen, right about there. But then here comes the leaders. They get involved. Perez escapes. So look at Shane Van Gisbergen completely flying in front of his car. And Perez, Pardis, everybody else able to escape. And Perez holds on to win.
Next to first in the final 2 laps, and it was that deft move to the outside. I think he had a sense of what was happening underneath him and just shaded high a little bit in the event that it all went crazy underneath him. That's exactly what happened. And then he did exactly what James Bickford had been doing when Bickford was in the lead. He just rode the momentum up top and kept his car wound up and said, you know what, if they get to the inside of me, they'll get to the inside of me. I'll take that, but I'd rather have the motor wound up all the way to make sure that I avoid the madness underneath me. And it worked out for him once again. The highway was indeed the right way for Brad Perez, who now has a non-points victory and an all-star victory to go with his win in the next-gen cars at Road America just a few weeks ago.
And talk about the amount of times, James, this race where we've seen drivers up at the top of the racetrack try to avoid incidents, but they usually get caught up because somebody down low just ends up slamming up high. They end up getting into them, and the guys up top always seem to be the innocent bystanders who get involved. That's the one time we saw it not come into play, not come into effect, and Perez is able to escape. I think a probably hyped Brad Perez is going to be ecstatic for this win, especially with it coming out of nowhere.
Look at the final rundown for the SimSeats All-Star race. Brad Perez, your race winner over David Schildhouse and Preston Pardis. I mean, shoot, that's just about the top 3 at Road America, in a sense. Mike Clay coming home 4th. Paul Sutton with the top 5. Good run for the 37. Robbie Lyons was 6th. Matt Stolnick rebounded to get 7th. 8th was Adam Cabot. Michael Massey 9th. And Garrett Smithley finished in 10th.
Pole sitter Will Rogers kind of went up and down throughout this race, but he's able to finish 11th. Same thing with Anthony Alfredo. He's able to survive for 12th. Ron Capps had an early spin just before that last section of the race. He ends up P13. Brandon Brown, nice job by the SimSeats machine. He's able to survive for 14th. With Justin Malillo, Jackson GG car, ending up within the top 15. Seth Eggert will be 16th. 17th will belong to the 15 of James Davison. Brett Baldick with a big comeback from early trouble. He ends up in P18. TJ Majors to 19th, and top 20. Our in-race supporter this evening, Steve Alfont, will finish there tonight.
21st was Gary Sexton. Josh Slate came home 22nd. SVG 23rd after that incident. Ryan Vargas 24th. Ford Martin was 25th this evening. Anders Krohn 26th. 27th to James Bickford. Gabe Wood came home 28th. Dylan Welch, Drew Welker, and Chris Wilner. Your 31 car field for the Season 3 All-Star event, the SimSeats All-Star Race featuring the Radicals at Texas for Monday Night Racing, presented by Tufco Flooring, as we will now bring in the newly anointed 2-time race winner in Monday Night Racing, Brad Perez. And Brad, simple question, one word, I'll let you go from here. How?
All right, I'm gonna keep it like 3,000% with every single one of you. Bean car, first of all. Second of all, this race was sponsored by TobyChristie.com, but the car was not ready, so I put the beans on it. Third thing, I was watching the home run derby the entire time I was racing and had no strategy, and we still won, and it's because of friendship and P-Money.
And maybe Pete Alonso's 35 home runs in the first round.
Absolutely, that was mental, and the fact that Shohei Ohtani just tied Soto is I was going bonkers like watching that, and then the last lap happened. I was like, oh, I can't watch no more.
So maybe a legitimate point here. The bonkerness of the home run derby, did that almost mentally set you up here? Because you knew it was going to get crazy, but in your head you're already going crazy because you're seeing these guys going yard in Denver of all places. Do you actually feel like that had some sort of effect?
Well, yeah, the home run derby actually had a complete effect on my race, as Ohtani just tied Soto. So the entire race, I was looking at my phone, so I was like, I don't really want to go anywhere because I really want to look at this home run derby. So I said, you know what? Let me try to go to the front, and if I get wrecked, at least I get to watch. So I just kept trying to go for it, and then that just kind of happened, and there you go.
And then we can dedicate this win potentially to all the folks of the Race Car People Softball League too. We know you do like playing baseball, softball, all forms, yeah?
Absolutely. I almost equally love baseball as much as I love racing. This is dedicated to the Race Car People Softball League, and dedicated to the fact that the home run derby is sick, and I love this race. This race was fun. And shout out Toby Christie, because I said if I won, I was going to shout out Toby Christie. I'm a man of my word. I'll post a screenshot right now on Twitter.
Most importantly, same question, wrap it. Gotta ask it this time, because I know you got to be going even more mental than you were last time. What's victory song for win number 2?
It's Envy by Afterlife. Just dropped right now. They have a new record coming on Hopeless Records very soon. Pre-order that, John. It slaps.
Baseball, Radicals, fun times all around. Brad Perez, a race winner in Monday Night Racing once again. Brad, thanks for the time and congratulations on dub number 2. Go see if Polar Pete goes and gets that home run derby for you.
Yee, watch this tiebreaker right now. They're tie-breaking it twice. Have a good night, guys.
2 screens always better than 1. And oh, by the way, Brad Perez, big-time Mets fan, so no surprise he's happy to see Pete Alonso ripping bombs in the Derby. But we'll keep our minds back on racing and return back to our P2 finisher. David Schildhouse is with Kenneth Bueno.
You know, James, I wish I knew a little bit more about baseball, but I do know about this finish. And David, can you even put into words what this finish was like with this car, with this combo, and with the situation with 2 laps ago?
I'm still trying to figure out how in the world I just finished second in this thing after hanging out in the back for most of it. That was an exciting last couple of laps, and I don't know. This was fun. It's I've got some experience in this, Kenneth. I've got some experience in wacky, wild combos like this, running things like moon car, rod car, grape drink. I feel like it's really prepared me for this type of event, and came out of this P2. I'll take that.
So you say that experience, I think we can kind of touch on that a little more, because the experience, especially with this car, a lot of downforce, a good amount of power, and at a track like this, it's pretty much full throttle with a lot of lane choices being the deciding factor of where you end up in position. Did that kind of take over as soon as the last 2 laps were starting to take place, that you thought the lanes were going to be the most efficient instead of where the other drivers were on the track?
Yeah, you need to be on the bottom. I mean, that was the most obvious thing, is you had to be on the bottom, and if you're going to make passes in 3 and 4 on the apron, you'd better damn well sure be committed to it. And I didn't make a pass down there the entire night until the final restart, those last couple laps. I had to burn up a quick repair early and just sort of played it safe, but at that point, you just got to send it. And, if you got to muscle somebody, you got to muscle somebody. This is Monday Night Racing. We get after it here. This ain't no BS. Even though it's the All-Star race, we race just as hard, if not harder, in the All-Star race than we would in a normal race. And that's why I love racing here. But the lanes were moving. You got to follow somebody. And I was following Mike Clay. Let me tell you something. Mike Clay drove an amazing final 2 laps. He was a good little shepherd. He got me up there to the front.
Hard-fought racing all the way to the very end. And I reckon there's probably going to be some happiness coming to next Monday night, because obviously it's going to be more hard-fought racing, considering you're going to be in the playoffs. You're going to be fighting for a Monday Night Racing title, but your face is going to be plastered on Anthony Alfredo's mobile, considering the fact that you beat him in the challenge and the bet that you guys made. Are you still excited for that coming next Monday?
Oh, absolutely. This was a nice little vacation, I guess, before we get really serious to settle a championship here. Yeah, I mean, I got to take a picture and send it over so we can get that done, but this was fun. This was nice to do. Did I win any money? Do they pay out money for second?
I think I may have to recheck, but I'm not entirely sure.
Oh, if I didn't win any money, that's okay. I still had a blast. This was a nice little break. I think everybody needed that, a moment to recharge before we get into the playoffs, before things get really serious. And I think they will be very serious. I think you're going to see a lot of intensity, guys showing a lot of emotion if something doesn't go their way. So hopefully we were able to sort of get all that out of our systems here tonight before we really start throwing down next week.
Build it all up, unleash it all for the race at Las Vegas in the Gambling City coming next Monday. But a fantastic race by you nonetheless, and a amazing job to survive at the end of it all. David, congratulations on your second place finish. A big thank you for taking the time to talk with us, and of course wishing you the best of luck when the playoffs kick off at Las Vegas.
Thank you, Kenneth. Big thank you to Monday Night Racing, Ford Martin, the whole crew there, all of you at Podium Esports, everybody watching, supporting the series. Big shout out to Splash Go Graphics, Cosman over there, hooked me up with another great paint scheme. Of course, my other sponsors, Gamer Advantage, Advanced GG, Respawn Products, Thrustmaster, Next Level Racing, and everybody at twitch.tv/Schildhouse. The children really got a good show tonight.
They got a good show indeed. David Schildhouse, the experience does pay off, James. He ends up in P2 at the end of the night.
Stillhouse to P2, and we've got P-Money in the house, Preston Partis, good buddy of Brad Perez too, so pretty fun, I think, to see those two get up near the front. But Preston, just that last restart, as soon as SVG comes off the nose of your car, take us from there to the checkered flag and what your thought processes were as you tried to go get the win.
Yeah, it was all right. I kind of messed myself up there. We had gave Jane a really good restart and created a gap, and probably shouldn't have went high on a 2 like that, but luckily me and Brad lined up because of that, and I don't know, we got kind of lucky going into 1. I kind of wish I didn't ram into that car and then it clear up Brad, because I thought maybe if I didn't hit him, we would have had a good shot at it, but it is what it is. It was a good night. We got to watch the home run derby too quite a bit throughout the race, so it was a little distracting, but we kept on the road.
I'll ask the same question then that I asked Brad to you. Do you feel like having the Derby on helped you? Because Brad openly said that he didn't really try and push and race, and that probably kept him out of trouble and ultimately put him in a position to make the charge here at the end. Do you think you can say the same for yourself, or was it a more calculated effort to try and lay back and not be super close to the front until the back half of the race from you?
It was kind of both. I mean, we kind of played it easy throughout the night. I know Brad did, like you said, he was watching the Derby, so we had him screaming in the Discord every time something happened. So he was a little behind me on the Derby coverage, so I would see it and he would start screaming. But for us, I don't know, we were just kind of riding around, and it was nice, like I said. We had 2 or 3, actually the 2 fast repairs still left until about 20 to go because of that, so it was good. It allowed us to go, and it was go time.
You get the go time, and now you start working your way towards all the fun that we're going to see in the playoffs. It's going to be entertaining to watch everybody go after it. And how fun is it going to be for you to just come in and try and race for victories and maybe steal a win from some of the playoff folks?
Yeah, it's going to be fun. I kind of wish, obviously tonight, get the $200 since we're not going for the championship would have been a nice little redemption for missing the playoffs. But yeah, it's going to be fun. No pressure or anything. Just go for wins. So it should be a good time, especially a few good track combinations coming up. Ford did a really good job, I feel like, for the playoff schedule. So each Monday night should be fun for everyone watching, and definitely on the game too.
Preston, thank you so much for your time, and congratulations on your podium finish. We look forward to seeing you out a little bit later this season.
All right, appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
P-Money was P3, and it was so tight at the end of things there, Kenneth Bueno, but goodness gracious. I guess maybe it being the middle of July, you wouldn't necessarily think that having a distraction like a home run derby would set you up in such a way that you could actually win this thing, but I have to believe that played to the advantage of everybody that was involved up at the front, because it takes your mind off of thinking about the race, which sounds backwards for most car and track combinations where you really do need all of your brain. But with the Radicals of Texas, it's more about strategy, it's more about placement, and it's more about being in the right place at the right time. And usually that's later than when you think you need to actually make your run.
And positioning, placement, that was held at its prime example in the final laps of that race, James, and it purely played to the kind of storytelling that we've been putting on throughout this entire event. But you were talking about a home run derby in mid-July. I was not expecting fireworks this late in July, especially already past July 4th weekend with the way this race went. A lot of excitement, a lot of great lead changes, lots of great positions. These drivers tried to race as clean as possible, and we saw some fantastic racing. Of course, saw a little bit of the spills, but that always comes with a wild car and track combo like the Radicals at Texas. But just like David should have said, it's a refresher for these guys. They get to have a little bit of fun, and now they get to tune things back up when we get to the playoffs at the Gambling City next week. That's going to be the biggest step for all 13 playoff drivers if they want to get close to a title.
You have this fun race, and then you turn into the big stuff. You turn into the playoff stretch. You turn your eyes towards that whole deal and how much things are going to get tenser and tighter, and certainly less freeform, I think, than they were this evening, starting next Monday night with the Cup Series at Las Vegas. But before we start talking about next events, I want to make sure I get the final word on baseball, because your boy's a baseball fan too, so ring the bell, baby. Go Phils. And with that covered, and the people educated about the best team in baseball. Let's talk about some of the events that are going to come up over the course of the next week. We've got the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series at New Hampshire Motor Speedway coming your way tomorrow night, 8:30 p.m. pre-race, 9:30 p.m. race coverage on the iRacing Twitch, Facebook, and YouTube channels. The Mark Lalonde Memorial 150 featuring the Xfinity cars at Chicagoland. You can sign up and hit that link to get in, get involved, donate to a great cause, and race one of the better combos. We saw how entertaining the Xfinity cars were at Chicagoland 1 week ago. Certainly no doubt that it will be the same when we go racing tomorrow night. You can see that broadcast on the Podium Esports Twitch channel coming up tomorrow evening at 10 p.m. Eastern. Then Sunday night, it's the SynMax Cup Series powered by MPI from the dirt track at Bristol Motor Speedway, 9:15 p.m. Eastern time. Start time for that on the Podium Esports Twitch channel. Next Monday night, we're back with the beginning of the playoffs of Season 3 from Las Vegas Motor Speedway using the cars of the NASCAR Cup Series, the Podium 2 Twitch channel, Podium Facebook and YouTube pages, and the MNR Twitter. If you want to watch that race, the PCA Sim Racing Team Racing Series, Round 3 of their season from the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps, 8 p.m. next Wednesday, July 21st on the PCA Sim Racing YouTube channel. And then the eNASCAR Road to Pro Qualifying iRacing Series from Homestead, Miami next Thursday night. Race 1, Podium Esports Twitch channel. Race 2, Podium 2. All 70 drivers on screen, some way, somehow. Both races covered here on Podium Esports, as we will do for the duration of the Road to Pro Qualifying iRacing Series and the entirety of Round 2. That broadcast coming your way next Thursday at 9 p.m. Eastern. Time to close out our show from Texas in the SimSeats All-Star Race. So for the team at Monday Night Racing, Ford Martin, Paul Sutton, Josh Mendoza. For our team at Podium Esports, Cisco Scaramuza, Gary Sexton, and John Theodore. Our team covering the race for you this evening, our producer Ryan Bauer, camera builder Dougie Beard, pit reporter Justin Prince, and my colleague in the booth, Kenneth Bueno. I am James Pike, the voice of Podium Esports. Thank you so much for watching coverage of the SimSeats All-Star Race from Texas Motor Speedway, and we will see you at the virtual Las Vegas Motor Speedway next Monday night for the beginning of the Season 3 Monday Night Racing Playoffs.